Happy Monday, everybody. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700. Hopefully starting off your week the right way. Looking forward to a fun show today. My guy Zach's holding it down in the production booth on the other side of the glass. We're going to check in with Josh Newman again because Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, we got down to that Final Four in college football, and now our national championship game is set. We'll check in with the guy who's been covering Texas so closely. Unfortunately, Friday night, Longhorns not able to advance. But in any case, Craig Smith is going to join me on the show today. Running Utes basketball got its first Big 12 victory. That's coming at noon. Craig Bowler-Jack to talk a little Utah Jazz at 12:30. And then at 1 o'clock, Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network to talk about the wild card weekend. And that's where we're going to start the show today. An absolute blast of a football weekend going all the way back to the Thursday semifinal between Penn State and Notre Dame. And then, of course, moving on from there, what you got was a weekend full of incredible football games, some fun finishes. There were more good games than there were bad games, right? Thursday and Friday were both awesome games. And then the games this weekend were pretty interesting. If you're a Broncos fan, you didn't love it. If you're a Chargers fan, you didn't love it. But if you're a football fan, you probably enjoyed the NFL wildcard weekend. And by the way, wait, there's more. Like I'm selling you infomercial products because of the postponement, the travel added for LA and Minnesota. The change happened because of the wildfires in LA, which continue to be a massive, massive problem. Minnesota and LA, the Vikings and the Rams will square off tonight, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So right after the drive with Spence Checketts, you'll be able to tune in to the coach's show, and then right after the coach's show, you'll be able to turn in for some NFL playoff football. Couple of things that you had to at least half smile about or chuckle about, or maybe you hate this team, so you felt some type of way about it, but the Commanders, the Washington Commanders, have shown us that, yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel for all of these teams that feel like they are so down in the dumps. I know the NBA is a different product, but if you are just distraught about how difficult it is to get behind Jazz basketball right now, and if you look at the roster and you look at the incoming trade deadline and you look at Lauri Markkanen's production this year and you look at all the things that make you frustrated as a Jazz fan, teams like the Washington Commanders can give you that little glimmer of hope because they spent decades being the butt of the joke and the laughing stock and rotating through quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. And finally, they get a Heisman Trophy winner, and scratch out the Heisman Trophy part. Finally, they get a winner to come in and even as a rookie, be part of the turnaround of this franchise, takes them to the playoffs. Jaden Daniels is something, man.
He's phenomenal.
He gets better when the game gets more difficult or when the rookie situation should be a problem. When the game is close, when your team is trailing, when your time is running out, he focuses and dials in. And I cannot help but think about the what might have been, because if you go back far enough, and it feels so long ago now, with Jaden Daniels, I mean, he's been drafted since, and he transferred to LSU since, and then, of course, he came from Arizona State. And before he went to Arizona State, there were a lot of people that were feeling pretty optimistic that guy was going to end up in a Utah football uniform. Now, maybe he just would have transferred to LSU anyway. It would have been really hard to keep him at the University of Utah, and obviously things have worked out mostly for Utah, minus the last couple of seasons. But the fact that Jaden Daniels was kind of like a tall, skinny, he looked like a bobblehead when he was at Arizona State because he had the same helmet on and he was like 6'3" and 125 pounds. I don't know what, I think they listed him at like 180. There's no way he was actually 180. He was so skinny. And that was one of the big concerns when he transferred and was playing SEC football, ended up winning a Heisman Trophy. And that was one of the big concerns. Well, what about, is he going to be able to stand up to the punishment that comes to quarterbacks in the NFL? And he has handled everything just fine. So the Washington Commanders, that's a team I've going back to when they were the Redskins. Now they're the Commanders. I've never been like a big fan. I've never, just for whatever reason, I've watched them with curiosity and nothing else. And now they are equipped with a guy who is going to be in the conversation alongside Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, and I think Justin Herbert will still be in that conversation, even though he had a disastrous outing this wild card weekend. And maybe Bo Nix will be one of those guys that we compare Jaden Daniels to. But the kids are all right, man. You look at it, and this NFL quarterback situation, there's still plenty of teams that need them, but there's some good young quarterbacks in the league right now, and Jaden Daniels is first and foremost among them. He has really done some incredible things with the opportunities that I won't even say that he's been given, with the opportunities that he has helped this team to earn. That's why you see all these veteran guys on the team, like Terry McLaurin and like Bobby Wagner, and they're embracing the young guy, even though he's 10 plus years younger than them. They're embracing this guy because they see that he is a professional. They see that he is a winner. They see that he is a leader. And the age thing and the experience thing for Washington right now is a secondary concern. And it's not even a concern. It's like a secondary fun fact that, oh, yeah, by the way, he's a rookie who's outperforming his age. He's outperforming his experience. He's outperforming his physicality in a lot of ways. He's outperforming pretty much everything. And he has Washington advancing for the first time in 20 years. Now, it was a great game. It was a tight game, and you had the bank shot kick. I tweeted this out. If you're going to doink a kick in, I think you got to call it. I think that Zane Gonzalez, when that kick comes off his foot, he's got to be like, bounce, goalpost. You got to call it. Like in pickup basketball, if you bank a shot in, people are going to give you a little sweat unless you call the bank shot. You got to do that. But the Commanders move on because Jaden Daniels is elite as a rookie, and that's the biggest reason because, as we know, quarterbacks solve your problems or create your problems at every level of football. But also because the guy that we were talking about on Friday, Bobby Wagner, he's far from being a rookie. He's rounding into the age where it starts to slow down for you most of the time. He's 34, going to be 35 relatively soon. And that, for me, is kind of the line of demarcation. If you play well beyond 35, you're probably an offensive lineman or a quarterback. If you're good enough to play well beyond 35 as a linebacker, you're, what we already know about Bobby Wagner, a Hall of Fame player. And he's been an All-Pro 11 times in his 13 seasons in the NFL. He has made a big impact, far more than he has missed being a big impact. And he recovered a fumble last night that helped change the landscape, change the complexion of this game. So the Washington Commanders are actually a fun team to watch right now. They're a really interesting team to watch. And you look what's going on in their division. The Giants are the biggest laughingstock. Well, maybe not the biggest. The Giants are among the biggest laughingstocks in the NFL right now. The Dallas Cowboys have made I guess they haven't made the announcement, but the news is broken via Adam Schefter and others that Mike McCarthy is out as the head coach in Dallas.
Yeah, it's official now.
So they're moving on from Mike McCarthy. I think they're going to be moving on from a lot of things. I know people get sick of hearing me say it. Deion Sanders? Huh? I don't know. I mean, You saw more stuff in the rumor mill this weekend that the interest between him and the Raiders is at least at the flirtation level. And Jerry Jones loves a story, loves a headline. And he also loves Deion Sanders. So are they going to interview him? Probably at least that. Are they going to hire him? I don't know. The most surprising thing for me is that a lot of reports out there that Mike McCarthy is expected to be interviewed for other head coaching jobs, that the Chicago Bears and the New Orleans Saints are expected to be interested in hiring Mike McCarthy. Now, I don't know Mike McCarthy. I don't want to be seen as a hater or throw shade at someone unnecessarily. But I don't understand the fascination with Mike McCarthy as a head coach.
Yeah, I don't understand the hype either at all.
He won a single Super Bowl with prime Aaron Rodgers, okay? And we're learning that Aaron Rodgers has its own set of problems. But still, the gameplay of your quarterback is the number one determining factor in the success of a team. And Mike McCarthy won a single Super Bowl in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, the best version of Aaron Rodgers, like pre-ayahuasca Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. And in Dallas, he's won nothing. In Dallas, he's done nothing. In Dallas, the Cowboys have had, over the course of his tenure, they've had one of the best offensive lines in football. They've had at least a serviceable quarterback, although I think that Dak Prescott has never been elite.
No.
Elite. There's been times under Mike McCarthy's tutelage down there in Dallas that they had at least close to an elite running back, like a top 6, top 7 running back. Right now, they've got the second or third best pass rusher in the game, in addition to some talent on the offensive side of the football. That offensive line that was elite a couple years ago is starting to have trouble staying healthy as those guys get a little bit older. But the point stands, I think, that Mike McCarthy, in the last iteration of the Dallas Cowboys, has never lived up to an expectation. And I realize that sometimes those expectations are unrealistically high because you're America's team or whatever. But just you look at a personnel situation and you say, did this guy get the most of what he had? And I don't think that answer is yes. So if you're Chicago and you're New Orleans, you could do better. Could you do worse? Certainly, because he's going to win you 60% of your games. But nobody wants to do just that. There's a reason why the Dallas Cowboys and Mike McCarthy are parting ways. And I would have preferred that the Dallas Cowboys kept him.
Same.
Because he is like that guy. You know when you hear about people in their relationships and like the wife or the girlfriend has the male best friend and it's become a meme, you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about?
Yep.
Mike McCarthy is the guy you don't have to worry about. Mike McCarthy is the dude that you can go let your wife hang out with. Like, oh, you guys like to play Dungeons and Dragons? All right. See you later. You guys are in the same book club? All right. You can go hang out with Mike. Mike is the dude where you're just like, you know what? It's probably a better situation than having a wild card, than having like a Deion, than having a Joe Brady, than having like some unknown commodity. Because with Mike McCarthy, I kind of know what I'm getting. Solid, square, win you some games, win more often than not. But if I'm in that division, if I'm in the NFC, I'm looking at the Dallas Cowboys under Mike McCarthy with Jerry Jones still pulling all the puppet strings. And I'm saying, please stay in that exact situation, Dallas. Please. Please do everything the exact same way. Jerry, keep running it as a family business. Be the last guy left who thinks that you don't actually have to have real football expertise to run a personnel department and to help draft. Please, just give those jobs to your sons. Don't actually get anyone with a football mind in that office. If I'm everyone else and I'm an NFC fan, my favorite team is the San Francisco 49ers, right? I want this guy to stay in Dallas, and that unfortunately is no longer the case.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too. Is like we were talking about this a little bit last week, but the Bears requested to interview McCarthy, and Porter, who's the executive producer for Spence's show, came in and he's like laughing his butt off, and he's like, "I would love that."
I actually would love to see Mike McCarthy and Caleb Williams. Like, if you do that, I know they already did the Hard Knocks thing in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Do another Hard Knocks with Mike McCarthy trying to figure out Caleb Williams. Please, I want to see it.
I do too.
It's insane to me how often we watch NFL front offices, NFL owners make the oddest of decisions. And I'm not going to pretend that I'm ready to be an NFL GM or that I know exactly who should be holding what job. There are candidates out there whose names I am learning at the same time that you're learning these names, like rising assistants and guys that you see on the short list and great coordinators that are probably ready to take over. Ben Johnson is a guy whose name is being put out there because of everything that's happened in Detroit. And that's sort of the natural order of things at every level of football. You see it with college football. You see it with the NFL. Hell, you could see it in high school football where guys who do a good job calling an offense or calling a defense end up getting an opportunity. And that's how it should be. But I'm not ready to tell you who Dallas needs to hire as their home run guy, or who Chicago or New Orleans does for that matter. But I am ready to tell you that I know a mediocre coach when I see one, and that's exactly what Mike McCarthy is. So if mediocrity is the effort and mediocrity is the goal, sweet. Give him a phone call, bring him in. While everyone else in the NFL is trying to copy what Andy Reid is doing and is trying to figure out the magic formula and the secret in the sauce to create dynastic powerhouse football teams, go grab the guy who, with a generational talent at quarterback, managed to eke out one Super Bowl in whatever it was, 10 seasons, and then with the Dallas Cowboys came up just shy of 60% winning. 58.3% of the games that Mike McCarthy coached in Dallas, he found a way to win. Tied, this is perfect. This is so perfect. Thank you, ESPN research. Mike McCarthy's 49-35 record in his 5 seasons as the coach of Dallas is good enough to tie for 8th best record in that time. Guys, the NFL and the Good Old Boys Club might be the least creative, most unimaginative, organization, even though it's not one organization, it's 32 different organizations. But just as a league, it might be the most set in our ways. I don't want to deviate from the norm. And that might be the thing that actually hurts some franchises. Because who in the NBA is saying, you know what, go get me the guy who's going to make sure we're at least in like the top, I don't know, we're in the top 25%. Wait, don't you want championships? I just want someone who's going to be like, you know what, we're up there for like the top 4th of teams in this league. But don't you want to see what you can do with this Caleb Williams guy that you used a first-round number 1 overall draft pick on? Yeah. But I just want the safe play here. I want to make sure that we're in the playoff conversation pretty consistently. But we play right now in the toughest division in football here in Chicago. Are you sure you want a guy who underperformed in Green Bay and then underperformed in Dallas if you look at what he actually had at his disposal? Yeah, but you know what? He didn't underperform that badly. He just kind of like, screwed it up in the wild card round a couple of times against San Francisco. Oh, and against the Packers. Mike McCarthy has done nothing to me against me personally, but I could not imagine someone I could not imagine a coach who I would not want running my franchise more than this man. He just doesn't do anything special. If you're going to flame out, if you're going to fail, at least do so spectacularly. Don't be the guy who's just good enough that it's hard to fire him, but bad enough that I'm never going to win anything big with him. I did not intend to spend 8 minutes on Mike McCarthy, but I'm just blown away by the idea that that man is going to exit from Dallas and immediately start getting other head coaching opportunities without going through the same rigmarole that everyone else has to do, the same like coaching reputation rehab. You got to go, you lose the head coaching opportunity, you got to go be a coordinator somewhere else, you got to prove to everyone that you're a great coach again, and then boom, you got to jump back on the bandwagon and hopefully get a head coaching opportunity. It's not dissimilar from what we're seeing with certain quarterbacks in the NFL right now, where you get drafted by a franchise and maybe bandied about, traded around a little bit, and then you find yourself in a better situation and you start to win, and then people are like, oh, wait a second. This guy's actually a good quarterback. Maybe he was a product of a bad system when he wasn't so good, or maybe we should have given him a little bit more time as a backup in order to develop and get used to the NFL game. Like Baker Mayfield lost last night to a rookie quarterback, but he dueled it out and played some decent football, as he has done in Tampa, being the guy to replace the guy, which of course is an unenviable position for most anybody to be in. Sam Darnold, not exactly the same thing, but again, a guy that had been written off largely because of his early lack of success, finds himself in the right situation, starts to win. And even though he's not a coach now who's going to be given another head coaching opportunity, these guys now are, the reputation rehab has happened, and it's like, okay, now this guy is going to be a franchise quarterback. After we had all kind of like decided maybe that, okay, quality backup, interesting piece if you want to put a trade together, but probably never going to be a franchise quarterback. Now Sam Darnold is back in that conversation. Baker Mayfield is back in that conversation. Geno Smith, hell, like he's old. He's the old version of this, but Geno Smith made himself, if not a definitive franchise quarterback, the quality starter and a dude that they were ready to spend the money on and keep around and not immediately look to draft to replace. So this weird cyclical thing that's going on in the NFL with retread coaches on some level is analogous to when you put quarterbacks in a better situation and watching them do their reputation rehab. Coaches get to skip the rehab part. They don't have to prove it over again. Like Sam Darnold was given an opportunity. He had to play well, and he had to prove that he could do it, and now he's going to get the contract because of it. Baker Mayfield, that already happened for him. Mike McCarthy, I guess, doesn't have to prove that. They're like, 58% winning? Good enough.
Great.
I'll give you a job, sir. It's dumb. I don't like it. But I'm not the one who gets to make these calls.
Nope. Imagine Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. I forget the word.
Like a reunion?
Yeah, reunion.
No. I won't even imagine it.
I was thinking about that.
Our show today is brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. Every day we are brought to you by Les Schwab Tires. They've got the tires, the wheels, and the accessories for whatever it is you drive. Make sure you stop by the local Les Schwab today. Let the professionals there get the job done right the very first time. Also, reminder to all of you folks out there who have you either love hats yourself, you have a hat lover in your life. We here in Utah now, we have this great local company. It's called Wooden Grail. And I'm positive you've seen the hats. You've seen other people wearing the hats walking around. Hopefully you yourself have purchased some of the hats and wear them around. Go to woodengrail.com right now. That's wood, the letter N, grail.com. Sign up for the newsletter. You're going to get all of the information on the latest drops, the new product releases, the new licensing deals that they sign where they're allowed now to do official gear for different colleges that maybe are new to the fold, new to the Wooden Grail fold. They've already gotten everything taken care of with Utah State, with BYU, even with UVU, and, of course, with Utah. They've got great stuff, lots of different colorways, different materials, the Flip the Script series where they turn everything upside down. They pay very close attention to the details, the materials, and the stitching and the embroidery. It is all of the highest quality. These are really, really high-quality hats, very stylish hats, and they're unique still. So you can jump on. You can be the individual, the guy or the gal that got on the train before it really got huge. Wood and Grail, woodandgrail.com. If you don't want to pick out the hat itself, just go get that loved one who loves the hats. Go get them a gift card. woodandgrail.com and tell them that OC sent you. All right, Friday night college football playoff semifinal. We saw one of the greatest individual plays in the history of college football in a game-changing moment. I want to talk about that. And Josh Newman's going to join us as well. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. That sound you could hear right here on ESPN 792.1 FM, your home of the college football playoff. Mark Kestisher on the call, ESPN Radio. The Buckeyes moving on. The strip sack, scoop and score. We've seen some great individual plays, like number one moments in college football games where you just have to look back and go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that guy made that happen. I mean, Eric Weddle against Air Force strip tackle, where he made the tackle and ripped the ball away at the same time. That one is way up there for me. Dalton Kincaid's unbelievable layout catch against USC, one of the 16 that he had that day, the long one in the northeast corner. Unbelievable individual play. Tyler Algier. Do you remember this? Tyler Algier on the interception chases down, I believe it was the Arizona State linebacker, punches the ball out, flips the whole field again, gets the ball back. One of the most impressive football plays I have ever seen. And Jack Sawyer bends the edge, takes the ball, and scoops and scores, ran it out. I mean, he was huffing and puffing when he got back to the sideline. He needed a little bit of oxygen, but seals the game for his team and a trip to the national championship. And he's like, he's bookended by a guy who was a number one recruit in the country. That's what Ohio State's got on their roster right now. That play was absolutely outrageous. A man who was in the building to watch it, Josh Newman, joins me on a Monday. Josh, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well, OC. How are you?
Doing all right. Have you seen a better individual play than the one that I was just regaling about with Jack Sawyer's strip sack fumble return?
Yeah, I was listening to you talk about the other moments, and obviously I've got the benefit of, a few days of hindsight. I don't know that I've covered a crazier individual play in a game, and like my brain is going through like some of the Utah stuff that I saw. Bryson Barnes coming into the Rose Bowl against Ohio State, throwing a touchdown pass to Dalton Kincaid, almost stealing that game. There were a couple of plays down the stretch in the 22 season against Oregon that stand out, but given what was at stake, and obviously that was the clincher of the Cotton Bowl, sending Ohio State to the national championship game. But then you start adding context to that moment. Like Jack Sawyer is from Pickerington, which is near Columbus. He grew up a rabid Ohio State fan. He had his mother paint his bedroom scarlet and gray when he was a kid. He goes to Ohio State as a five-star recruit. His career in totality has not panned out to that of a five-star recruit, but now he has this legendary moment, right? He will go down in Ohio State lore forever for that play, regardless of what happens in the title game. Oh, and just as the capper, he and Quinn Ewers, right? Quinn Ewers spent his freshman season at Ohio State. He and Quinn Ewers were roommates when they were freshmen together in 2021, and they've remained close. So, this legendary play came at the expense of his friend / former teammate. It was wild to be watching that whole goal line sequence in person. And now that I'm talking about it, it was just this like surreal, like legendary epic moment that people are going to be talking about literally forever if you enjoy Ohio State football.
I think right now in college football, the average fan, it's easy to kind of get a little bit jaded to the changes, and I don't recognize some of this stuff anymore. But then a moment like that happens with all of the backstory that you're talking about, and you're just like, well, it ain't all bad, because that is like Hollywood script type stuff.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things where, and I remember sitting at Jerry World pregame, and, we're coming up on kickoff and the atmosphere is building, right? I think a lot of people thought that this would be essentially a quasi Texas home game. Okay, because Arlington is only 3 hours from Austin, so you figured that, Texas fans would gobble up all the tickets, but that wasn't the case. And it was just a reminder that Ohio State fans travel too. It was probably a 50-50 split, okay, maybe 60-40 Texas, but it was one of those like big game atmospheres. And by the time kickoff came, the place was pulsating, and it was not a tremendous football game. by any means for a lot of reasons. But once you got, deep into the fourth quarter, Texas is sort of like treading water the whole time. Ohio State goes on this, 13-play, 88-yard drive to take the lead. Texas comes down the field. They have first and goal at the 1. Obviously, that didn't pan out, but just down the stretch, like you said, all the changes, you don't recognize college football anymore. The end of that game was a reminder of like how special college football is and why so many people love it.
You mentioned the game wasn't all that spectacular. Look, a close back-and-forth affair like that, we're going to talk about it as a classic. We're going to talk about it as a great game. Sure. Neither team was able to get a run game going at all. Texas finished with 58 yards on 29 carries. Ohio State not much better than that, 24 carries for 81 yards. Do we credit the defenses for this, or was this an offensive line and execution problem just as much?
I think, speaking from the Texas side, I think it's both. The Texas offensive line was, let's call the Texas offensive line very good for like 85% of the year. The other 15%, they gave up a combined 13 sacks and 2 losses to Georgia, and they got pretty overwhelmed by Ohio State. So that was a problem. The run game specifically for Texas has been, very Jekyll and Hyde. Okay, they lost their number one guy, C.J. Baxter, in August to a pretty severe knee injury, and then you kind of had to circle the wagons. Okay, so you lost C.J. Baxter. Jaden Blue is a junior who, a lot of people thought that he could be, that top running back. That was up and down. He had fumbling issues. Trey Wisner, who's a sophomore, played primarily on special teams last year as a freshman. He was sort of forced into duty. At the end of the day, the Texas running game really suffered from C.J. Baxter's injury. And when you take the rest of the room and the depth, even combined, you really had like one functional running back. And I think the fact that they were able to sort of overcome that mostly, and they went 13-3 and went to the CFP semis. I don't think Steve Sarkisian is getting enough credit for the job that he did with this team, because there were a lot of issues that they sort of had to plug holes and figure it out, and depth, etc. I don't think he's getting enough credit for the season that they actually had.
Is Jerry Jones going to call Steve Sarkisian now that he needs a head coach?
Adam Schefter goes on Sunday, done a couple of weeks ago. Don't be surprised if Steve Sarkisian gets a call, etc. I don't think he's the next Cowboys coach, but I would not be surprised if some of these teams. I wouldn't be surprised if they had already tried to kick the tires through back channels, and I wouldn't be surprised now if his name pops up in some form or fashion with whatever it is, 5 or 6 teams looking for a head coach, because that's what happens. Okay, they've won 25 games the last 2 years. They've been to the CFP in consecutive years now. Steve Sarkisian, has long had this reputation as QB guru, QB whisperer. He's turned guys into Heisman Trophy winners, Davey O'Brien Award winners, and his offense was, pretty prolific in spite of, the running back trouble. Quinn Ewers was pretty quietly hurt for the last 3 months of the season, had a pretty good year. So I would not be surprised if his name pops up here at some point in a real sort of way, not just tossing his name out there like Schefter did.
Josh Newman, you recognize the voice, is my guest right here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Talking a little Texas, Ohio State, the fallout. Now, this is where we get into how different college football is now, because I think that most of us, it would stand to reason that, like, all right, a team that made it to the college football playoff semis and was a couple plays away from at least having an opportunity to compete for a national championship and has a great coach that, as far as we know, is intent on staying, and has, we think, Arch Manning coming back. Like, that roster, some guys are going to matriculate on, but they've got some bright young talents. They get one of the best young pass rushers in all of college football. Like, this team is really going to be something, and they'll have enough money to keep this roster together. But then you see some of the other teams that are already out of the playoffs, and 5 seconds after they lose the game, someone's in the portal, they've committed to Miami, and you're just like, okay, this is nuts. Because I've always, when we were talking about this potentially happening in college football before it was reality, I was like, yeah, there'll be a lot of movement, but it won't be valued starters on great teams that move around. And yet that has been the case. I obviously was very wrong about that. So when I say, yeah, Texas should be able to keep everybody, am I correct there?
That's a great question. I mean, look, we're sitting here on Monday, and in fairness, the deadline to have underclassmen declare for the NFL draft is Wednesday. And then on top of that, the fact that Texas's season went longer, they now have, the players have a new window to enter the transfer portal.
They get an extra 5 days, right?
It's an extra 5 days. So both of these deadlines I'm talking about, transfer portal window for Texas players and the hard deadline for underclassmen to declare for the draft, both are Wednesday. So to your question, I reserve full judgment, but for the purposes of this exercise, you can sort of look at the roster and, I think we have a pretty good idea of who's going to leave, not for the portal, for the draft specifically. And then there's some other key guys who are like a little more 50-50. Maybe they've got a first-round grade, high second-round grade. They can't make up their mind. I think ultimately there is going to be enough remaining, and you'll go shopping in the portal to maybe fill some holes, just like they did this year. You have Arch Manning coming back. I think there's enough to believe that. I don't think they're the favorite to win the SEC. I don't even think that they're even maybe 2 or 3, but we'll go into next season probably discussing Texas as a top 4 SEC team. And if you are as we saw this year, if you are a top 4 SEC team, you could be entering Thanksgiving, early December in the playoff mix as the 10 seed, the 11 seed, somewhere in there. I'm a little more skeptical. Look, you see all these 2 early top 25 polls and trying to project things, and you see Texas at number 1, and I understand that a lot of that is Arch Manning. I'm skeptical because, look, he's got the tools. His last name is Manning, the genes, the whole thing. But you are replacing 80% of your offensive line, including your center, who started 55 games, and your left tackle, who just won the Outland Trophy. That's not a great recipe for a first-time, full-time starting quarterback, even if his last name is Manning. So a lot of questions, a lot of things that have to get worked out here. Some are going to be happening within the next 2 days. Some are going to be going into the spring. Can C.J. Baxter get back healthy and be that number 1 running back, right? They're not expecting him back until June. So a lot of questions, but I think there's reason for optimism that they can be, again, not necessarily contending for the SEC, but that they can be very good again and at least get back into the playoff mix.
All right, circling back to this semifinal game, now that you've seen Ohio State up close or closer than even usual, are they on their way to a national championship in your mind?
I think so. They just have so many weapons on the outside, and credit to Texas. They did a really terrific job shutting down Jeremiah Smith, who just went roughshod on Oregon in the Rose Bowl, had a tremendous freshman season, but they couldn't stop everybody. If you're going to stop Jeremiah Smith, if you're going to double and, bracket defense and all these exotic things, that means that there's more guys who are just open, right? And Travion Henderson had a great game at running back, and Will Howard, for whatever shortcomings he may have had during the season, was pretty steady against Texas, didn't make many mistakes, and he can go with his legs. Okay. So, while Notre Dame is physical and capable, they're very banged up. And the fact that they were able to grind that semi out against Penn State was very impressive. But I think Ohio State just has a little too much. I don't think Ohio State runs over them, but I do think they do enough to ultimately figure it out and win the national title.
Yeah, tough situation for these teams are going to be playing their 15th, 16th game of the year. I mean, this is getting to NFL season level type stuff, and that was one of the questions is the attrition, the injury attrition that would eventually happen, and to the credit of Ohio State, they've been able to overcome some injuries on their own offensive line, and here they are in that position. So as we look at it, and the format is about to be played out all the way for the very first time. I know I've asked you this before, but I mean, it's a good product, this expanded college football playoff, right?
I think so. I mean, I've enjoyed it just because the regular season has it meant more teams were involved, more teams are getting in, which means more regular season games mattered. Now, you look at the 12-team field. How many of those 12 teams could legitimately win the national title? Probably 4, maybe up to 6 teams, not 12. I don't think 12 teams. There's not 12 teams every year capable of winning the national championship.
You were not a believer that Boise State could actually go 4 games in a row against elite competition? Come on.
I'm sorry to Ashton Genty and the good people of Boise, Idaho, but no. Look, if we want to make tweaks to this thing, again, having covered 3 rounds of this and having seen it, 2 things come to mind immediately. Forget the ranking. You need to see this truly as the ranking comes out. Like Boise finished whatever they did, 9 or 10, but because they were, a champion, they got up to the 3 seed. Get rid of that. Whatever the ranking is, seed it like that. And then, I would put the first 2 rounds on campuses. All right, the first round game, Texas hosted against Clemson, tremendous atmosphere. And it was a playoff game, and there was 105,000 people there, and it's just better on campus. I think we can all agree that a campus game is better than having it at, an NFL stadium, a neutral site. I would like to see the first 2 rounds, the first round and the quarters on campus. But, for decades and decades, the people in charge, need to placate the bowl people, so they're going to need to figure that out.
Well, I appreciate you serving as our de facto college football playoff insider for this entire time because going back to August, we all thought that Utah might be a factor in this college football playoff, and then they did not end up being. So thank goodness Texas was there, and we had a Texas guy that we could lean on, Josh. Really appreciate your contribution to the show. Thank you.
It's a good thing you know me, OC. I appreciate it.
One of the great blessings of my career, knowing Josh Newman. He really is the best. And we wish him a lot of success down there at Texas. By the way, it was a bummer when Josh didn't get to continue working at on the Utah beat. A huge bummer for a lot of people locally. But when you talk about someone's career bouncing and maybe zigging when he wanted it to zag, he ended up covering Texas. That's you can't hate on that, man. That's like there's nobody on planet Earth that thinks that being a Utah football insider is a more important collegiate job or a more interesting collegiate job today than covering Texas. So I'm glad that he stumbled upward, if that's the right way to put it. Big thanks to Josh Newman. And a reminder to all of you, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, we have a cash kickoff. It is here. Now is the time for your shot to win $1,000 to pay your bills. Text BUCKS, BUCKS, to 508-777-1000 for a chance to win. That's 508-777-1000. This is a nationwide contest. BUCKS to 508-777-1000. All right. One of the strangest things I have ever seen, a video went viral this past weekend. An undefeated, now retired, professional mixed martial artist got kicked off of an airplane, and probably not for the reason that you think. You're going to have to indulge me. I'm going to take 6 minutes to talk about one of the weirdest things that's ever happened in the MMA world. Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. 700 in the Sean O'Connell Show. All right. I know people get a little bit nervous and sweaty palmed when they think I'm going to talk too much MMA, so I deliberately put this in a short segment because Craig Smith is going to join us in 5 minutes, and then we got Bowler. Craig Bowler-Jack is going to join us at 12:30, so we got a lot of basketball to get to next. But I don't know if you've seen the viral video. I don't know. Your algorithm is probably different than mine. I've got a lot of MMA stuff fed to me by the social media world. If you've heard the name, Khabib Nurmagomedov, all right? He is like the Dagestani champion. He's the guy who kind of like put that place on the map, and it has since become a massive, massive pool of talent for the MMA world. Dagestan, by the way, is a republic in Russia, in the Caucasus Mountains, and everyone there knows how to fight, and everyone there knows how to wrestle, and it's a really fascinating place. You can find lots of stuff on YouTube and other spots. Anyway, Khabib Nurmagomedov retired from the UFC undefeated as a lightweight champion. He had a famous rivalry with Conor McGregor that was more of a verbal rivalry. Khabib actually smoked McGregor when they fought, knocked him down, ended up choking him out. It was not that close, all right? And he has since moved on to become a coach of other great fighters. His cousin is fighting in the next fight that I get to call. He is currently the Bellator lightweight champion. His other cousin is fighting this weekend for a bantamweight championship in the UFC. And his number one student, who is not actually genetically related to him, Islam Makhachev, is currently the UFC champion. All right? And his other friend, Gaji Rabadnov, won our PFL championship last year. So all these guys train together like it's insane. All right? So an easier way to say that is this is one of the best fighters ever to walk the face of the planet. Mostly with his ground and pound and his wrestling. Not like super spectacular and striking, but the dude is a problem, okay? A viral video came out yesterday of him getting kicked off a flight. He is sitting in the exit row in the window seat. And you know how the flight attendant comes up to you if you're in the exit row and goes, hey, are you willing and able to assist if there's an emergency? And you have to give a verbal yes. You have to make eye contact and say yes. Mm-hmm. That's just like an FAA regulation. Well, apparently there was some confusion in that whole situation, so somebody nearby pulls out their cell phone and starts to film. And there's not really a language barrier. He's fluent in English, right? But he didn't really get what she was asking because they had already asked him that at the gate because he was booked for the exit row, and they were just like, are you sure you can do this? And he was like, yeah, I can do this. So then he didn't know that there was a rule where the flight attendant had to do this, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the long and short of it is he gets kicked off the flight because she doesn't like the cut of his jib, and she says, you know what, I don't think you know what we're talking about. I don't think you're actually willing and able to assist in the situation that we're talking about, so you either move seats or you get off the plane. He's like, I'm not going to move seats. It's not fair how you're treating me. And they're like, okay, then you got to get off the plane. So he ends up getting off the plane. He put on his social media that he thought it was BS, but he flew out to his destination an hour and a half later. The craziest thing about it is she's like, I'm going to bring security down here to remove you. And the deal is, if he actually wanted to resist, the security at an airport is not going to be able to remove Khabib Nurmagomedov from his seat or from the airplane. No. Like, if he wanted to be a jerk about it, like, it would take cops with tasers and guns to get him out of there, and it would take multiple in that regard. So he went willingly, although he was upset about it, understandably. And here's the number one crazy thing about this. In all the videos and circulating, it was like this. He's on an Alaska Airlines flight. He's on an Alaska Airlines flight. And everyone was like, why is he flying Alaska Airlines in coach in the exit row? This guy is worth like $100+ million. What is he doing? Well, he's a simple man. He's not going to be a diva about first-class seats, that kind of thing. But that was reported wrong. It wasn't even an Alaska Airlines flight. He was flying Frontier Airlines. Frontier. That's a budget airline.
Yeah.
He was sitting in the exit row seat in coach of a Frontier Airlines flight as one of the biggest stars in the MMA world. And that's why this is crazy. That's why this is so insane, because even though all of us in the MMA world like to pretend that this is a mainstream sport now, LeBron James ain't ever sitting in the exit row seat of a Frontier Airlines flight.
No way.
Like Kevin Durant, whoever you want to say is the basketball equivalent of Habib Nurmagomedov, that guy has never even seen a Frontier Airlines flight. That's why this was such a funny and hilarious story, even though it could have got serious. He handled it well. I don't think the airline did particularly handle it well. That's that. All right, that's the hot lunch for today. We take a break. We come back with the head coach of Utah men's basketball, Craig Smith, joins us in 3 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Here's Gabe Matson with it for Utah. Outside Lovering, inside Ezra catches, ball fakes, goes up and dunks it down. Asar's got 16.
And 7 passes from the big guy.
Ezra Asar, Saturday night, a win over Oklahoma State. Running Utes' first ever Big 12 conference win. That sound courtesy of the Utah Sports Radio Network. Bill Riley on the call. You're Running Utes back in action Wednesday night against TCU in Fort Worth. It's old rivals this week. It's TCU, it's BYU. The head coach, Craig Smith of Running Utes basketball, joins me now on the Sean O'Connell Show. Coach, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, Sean. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
Doing great. Congrats on your first Big 12 win. How does it feel to get that one under the belt?
Well, it felt amazing because it's been a minute. But I just feel I'm so happy for our guys. A couple of the first few games, I thought the last two before this victory, the games were a lot closer than the scores. And then especially the Iowa State game, I thought we did a lot of things really, really well that game. And then it kind of got away from us late. But I thought we learned some things. We knew this transition could be difficult going into the Big 12. It's a great league. It's been the best league in the country, 5 of the last 6 or 6 of the last 7 years. And it's a different brand of basketball than the Pac-12. It's just different. And so you got to be able to do some things differently. And I think our guys have grown and learned and adjusted. And like I said, specifically that Iowa State game, I just thought we really competed and played with a lot of physicality and played with an edge to us, and that's how we've been practicing since the Texas Tech game. We've been practicing hard, but it's been a different level of physicality, which has been great to see. And the guys were finally rewarded with a W, and we did a lot of good things last game out. So, but like we've told them, man, you enjoy it, but it's on to the next because we have 10 straight weeks of 2 games a week, 20 straight games here, and there's no rest for the weary. And now we have, I think, 3 games in the next 8 or 9 days. So got to get back after it this afternoon and hopefully have a fantastic practice.
Yeah, it's not like it's going to get easier in this Big 12 conference, but let's talk about what went right against Oklahoma State. Now, I know that from a pure athleticism and matchup standpoint, they're not necessarily maybe as daunting as some of the other competition that you already did face. But you blew them out. I mean, this was a 21-point victory. You had great contributions from a couple bench players. Obviously, your starting lineup gave you what they needed, especially Ezra, who we just played that highlight for. I mean, Coach, I'm going to give you all the credit. I'm sure you waved some magic wand in practice over the week and said, all right, Ezra, we've got it fixed, and now you're going to give me 21 points. What was he doing so well?
Well, Ezra did a lot of things well. First of all, coming into the game – I would say, and I told him this when I took him out the last time he came out of the game, I said, Ezra, I felt like, and I told our coaching staff this after practice on Friday, I thought Ezra had his best 2 practices as a running Ute. And I've always believed, now it's not exactly this way, but usually if you practice well, you're going to play well. And, Ezra's coming back, right, Christmas break, and then he came back and played against Baylor, and then they had a death in the family, and he went back, to show his respects or pay his respects. So he did not play in the Texas Tech game, and then so it's been a little bit uneasy or choppy, and he's responded in a great way, and obviously at the 21 points, and he defended really well, played well against Iowa State as well, and so he brings a different level to our team, a different level of physicality, and he plays with force. And, I also think he's showing a level of, I don't want to say curiosity, but, Ezra started playing basketball, I believe in 10th or 11th grade. So he's really learning and he's really growing. And now he's becoming even more curious and understanding how to really put his stamp on a game. And we're going to need him to do that. Not only, this week, but the rest of the season.
He gave you those 21 points in only 17 minutes. Was that a product of you didn't need to ride him too hard and you just wanted to give him a little extra time? Or, that's not a huge workload for a guy who's being productive.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of how the game went, right? Like, so when you're going in, and then you got to be able to adapt and adjust. But we got the big lead, and we played kind of a little bit different way through some guys. And then one time I took them out because I just wasn't happy with them. And that's how it goes sometimes. But I loved how he just right out of the gates, right? He was playing with force. I think he had a couple dunks early, got fouled, and I think he went 7 for 8 from the free throw line, if I recall. And he's got a knack of knowing how to get fouled. That was a big reason. That was part of the reason that we recruited him. Is I love guys that know how to get fouled, and he does a great job of anticipating and being one step ahead that way. So, it was just one of those things that way where, and then it gets to the end, and we were playing some other guys that I felt like needed to see the floor. And so, but excited for his game and how he really put his imprint on it, as well as a lot of our other guys that really played really efficient, winning basketball.
Greg Smith, my guest here, head coach of Running Utes basketball on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the game that was against Oklahoma State, Utah's first Big 12 win, and what's coming. And we've talked about this already. We talk about it on the show all the time. I've talked with Sean Mooney about it, players about it. There is a stylistic difference, and you alluded to this, between Big 12 basketball, Pac-12 basketball, and Big 12 basketball, and SEC basketball, and West Coast Conference basketball. And we, in the media, especially as non-basketball guys, we lean on this like a crutch. It's just a slightly different. But as you're scouting TCU coming up, and as you're scouting BYU, is there a pretty decent level of conformity to whatever that Big 12 basketball is? Or within the league, is there still a lot of variation?
I mean, there's some variation, like there is in every league. You got 16 teams. However, and now we're 4 games in. So, for us, right, we started on the road at Baylor, right, home against Texas Tech, who's playing, I think they're number 1 in the country in field goal percentage offense. And then you go to Iowa State. So, right out of the gate, those are your first 3. Yeah, it's a little bit of a gauntlet, but that is what this league is at the same time. So you got to keep pushing forward. But just there's a lot of, and I haven't seen everybody yet. You are starting to see, we've obviously seen 4 teams firsthand. And then, of course, we're familiar with Colorado, Arizona State, and Arizona, and BYU because we would play BYU every year at Utah. So, but there's just a lot of playmaking out there. I mean, the guards in this league can really, really go. There's a ton of playmaking ability, guys that can shoot the 3. They have the juice and the athleticism to put the thing on the deck and explode into the paint, or the ability to change gears slow to fast, right? And then they see the game at a high level. So if you're going to overhelp on a guy, boom, they're going to zip it to the open man for an open 3, or now that guy's going to drive a closeout. Or if the 5-man on a pick and roll is going to, overhelp to the guard, they're going to throw it up for a lob. They can get to the rim, get fouled. There's just a lot of playmaking at the point, at the 2, at the 3. And the 3 is one the position is maybe a little more flexible, but the 1 and the 2, there's a ton of playmaking ability. And then just guys that are going to defensively, people that are going to get after you, right? Whether you pick up full court or just the ball pressure. And then most of these teams have 5s that are really long and really athletic. And it's just hard to score in the paint because they do such a good job of protecting the paint. So there's a lot that goes into it. And certainly you saw some of that in the Pac-12, but I just think more consistently up and down the league, you see a lot more of that. But then the last thing I'll say with the league, just the depth of it, right? I think there's 6 teams, and I don't know exactly on this number. I know about 4 or 5 days ago, there's 4 teams in the top 20 of the net. And I think the league is projected to have 7 or 8 teams in the NCAA tournament. So, of course, the depth of what you're going to see on a night in and night out basis. And I think it's awesome. I'm excited about it. Like, you want to be a part of the best league in the country. You want to be a part of that and then obviously win, because if you're good enough, you'll make the NCAA tournament. If you're not, you won't. And so, but we knew this was going to be different and a challenge, and, we're adjusting to what we need to do. And I thought we gave a lot different look the other night and played with a lot of conviction, and that's what you got to be able to do. Play with force, play with conviction in this league.
As long as we're talking about depth, I always look at what you're getting out of your bench. You had 9 guys in this game in double digits minutes-wise. Caleb Lohner played 9 minutes, so he was almost there. In a perfect world, how long or short is a running Utes bench in terms of double-digit minutes?
Yeah, I mean, I like to play 9 guys. 8's easy. I like to play 9. Our team, it might just be a team where we're going to be playing a little bit 9 and 10, depending on foul trouble. The other night, Lawson Lovering, who's been playing very good basketball, picked up his 4th foul with 16 minutes to go in the game. So now you're, kind of getting Zach Keller in there more minutes and Caleb Lohner and kind of splitting those minutes. We even played Ezra some at the 5 that game. So the game, you got to do what it takes, for that game and ride the hot hand. This team has a lot of balance. And so it can change depending on, but at the same time, you have some of your go-to guys. It's got to be ready. Keanu Dawes, I thought came in. First of all, Jake Wallin, we made a change in the lineup, and I thought he performed at a really high level. 16 points on 5 shot attempts, and it was just really, really sound. He makes so many winning plays. And then I'm really proud of KD. Keanu Dawes, whose minutes have been really kind of up and down, but he stayed with it. And he performed at a high level. He scores 16 himself on 10 shot attempts. And so we're going to have depth in this league with such quick turnarounds. Like I said, I think we have 3 games in the next 8 or 9 days. You got to have some real depth to be able to compete at a high level. And so I'm excited where these guys are going.
You shot 40% from 3 as collectively in this game, and obviously the three-pointer in basketball has become, such a massive part of the game. I guess it always was, but even more so in recent years. What's the magic number for you? What are you looking at as you self-scout? Where do you want these guys? We would all love to see 100% from 3, but is 40 enough to keep shooting them up?
When you say 40%?
40%, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really good number. I just think more than anything, I don't get crazy into numbers. I know some coaches are big in all that stuff. Like, let's take good shots, right? Let's take care of the ball. Let's take good shots. And when these guys have been playing basketball for a long time. Most of these guys, Ezra's a late guy, but all these, pretty much every other guy on our team has played basketball for a long time, right? And I think they have a good feel. And of course, we talk about roles and what's a good shot and what's not. But let's stick to, playing good, winning basketball. And I felt like, early in the year when we lost our 3 centers, we had to really kind of reinvent ourselves on the fly. We lost all 3 centers within 7 or 8 days of our first game. So then we were really taking a lot of threes, but it felt like we almost had to because we were so small. I mean, Jake Wallin had an amazing summer, but he was playing the 3, and now all of a sudden he's playing a lot of 5. And so that's a whole different role, a whole different learning curve, a whole different – in basketball, it's a game of rhythm and timing. And so now, the other night he started as a 3. He's getting way more reps at that, of course. So it's a game of rhythm and timing and just playing connected. I thought we found a stretch there after Christmas where we were just getting really overzealous from the 3 and just kind of hoisting just to take them. And I thought our shot selection was not where it needs to be as a whole. And so we've been really emphasizing that, and I feel like we've been doing a better job with that. But, we have a lot of weapons. We have guys that can make open shots, and sometimes you just need to go good to great.
Utah head basketball coach Craig Smith, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show for a couple more minutes. First Big 12 win in the books, TCU coming, and then, of course, it'll be BYU. When you're going through a season like the one that you guys are currently in, right, I was so impressed with when you brought the guys down, the optimistic outlook and the acceptance that, hey, it's going to be tough. We're just going to keep working hard, keeping our heads down. And when you're playing, good basketball, but you don't get the wins, and when the results are not exactly where you want them to be, it becomes a culture thing, and we over-index on that word probably on this show more than any other show. But it matters, right? Your practice habits, and you were just talking about how Ezra had a great week of practice, and that translates to a good game. How has it been managing things like frustration, managing things like, hey, coach, my role is changing and developing as there's injuries and other stuff around me? Are the practice habits where you need them to be? Is the atmosphere and the morale where you need it to be?
Yeah, I feel like it's been, outstanding. I mean, we have a great group. We have guys that want to win and represent our program the right way and compete. And they know, like, if we're not going to compete and play a certain brand, it's going to be hard for you to play, right? And they understand that. And I think they've seen that. And I think more than anything, too, like, now they've felt it. Like, when we're picked last in the league, right? 16 out of 16, not where anybody wants to be, but that's where we were picked. And so that's the level of respect that we have right now. And you got to go earn respect. And so how do you earn it? You got to put the time in. You got to work at it. You got to have the physicality. It takes what it takes to be great. It takes what it takes. And so these guys are really hung together. It's a great group to be around. They want to be coached. We have an attitude that craves improvement. And so, we'll see where this thing goes. Obviously, it doesn't get any easier. You have to learn from mistakes. You have to learn from doing things well, and then develop a level of consistency and understanding winning and making winning plays. And, winning plays are as simple as boxing out every time, right? Winning plays are cutting hard. Winning plays are sprinting the floor, whether you're going from defense to offense or offense to defense. And I could go on and on and on. And so, there's some guys in our program that haven't won at a high level, and then there's some that have. And so you just got to keep competing, keep growing. It's a long season. We're almost halfway there. I think we have 15 games in. There's 31 regular season games. And so that's the beauty. We're going to have so many golden opportunities in front of us. And so we just got to put our best foot forward and keep competing and keep being a great teammate. And usually when you do that, good things happen.
We had Mark Harlan in studio at the end of last week and had a good, almost hour-long conversation with him about all things going on up in the athletic department, and your program obviously was part of that discussion. And I'm curious, like, how active are the conversations while you're game planning, while you're running practices, while you're coaching, while you're in season? How active is the communication about things that are kind of that extracurricular, name, image, and likeness, and the collective, and what changes need to be made in order to compete at the level of recruiting, and this coming era where you've got revenue sharing and all that stuff? You've got to manage your schedule as an in-season coach, plus all of this stuff. What's the time split?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. That's the beauty of being a head coach. There's a lot. You got to really prioritize your time, what really matters, what doesn't, and there's a lot of hats you got to wear. And I love our staff. We have a lot of new members on our staff. That's been another nuance that we're going through, because we do have so much. We had a lot of turnover last year. And so, understanding and teaching our guys that as well. But between NIL, right, all the new rules with the portal, the judgment or the court ruling that's going to be coming out soon, right? Then there's a new rule with junior college recruiting, and do they get an extra year or not? And who gets those years? There's just a lot of managing a new league, right? 10 new players in our program, right? I think 7 new staff members. It's just been a lot, and it's a good thing. It's a challenge. You have to embrace it. You have to own it. The NIL thing, I call it the salary cap. Obviously, it's not a salary cap, but it's, in a lot of ways, it's comparable to a salary cap. Every school has a different cap number. It's not like there's no cap, so to speak. It's like Major League Baseball. Some teams are the Dodgers, some teams are the A's. And so you got to kind of know, where you stand, and you got to manage it the best that you can and figure it out. And so it's a big part of what you do. It's January, 13th today. 13th, I think. And so there's a lot coming down the pike here, whether it's our team, skill development, game planning, understanding our league, trying to compete at the highest level, and then you manage all the other stuff as well. So it's awesome, man. I feel like I I don't work a day of my life. I get to do what I love to do. It's an exciting time in college athletics. You just got to embrace it and embrace the challenge that goes with it. And so I'm excited about the future of this program and where it can go.
Coach, last thing before I let you go, BYU on Saturday. How many of those new guys in your program really deeply understand this rivalry?
Yeah, I mean, the guys that have been through it, the guys that have grown up in Utah, those guys certainly understand it. I know guys have talked about it in the past, and you feel it. And you know, the other sports, right, the fall sports that have been through this, you get a feel for it. Of course, our football, you know, the football game was at home. So most of our guys are at that game, so you get a sense of that as well. So, you know, it's you throw the records out the window, right? This stuff doesn't matter. Both teams are going to play at a really high level. Hopefully we'll get a ton of fans and sell the Huntsman Center out, and they feel our presence. So we're really locked into TCU right now. And our team being the best that we can be, but it's definitely going to feel different, and it does feel different when you get to that game. And it's the type of game that these guys will remember the rest of their lives, and it's just the facts, the pomp and circumstance that goes into it, and the bragging rights, and you hear about it, you know, throughout the off season. So I know our guys will be excited to play that game, but we got to really lock into here to TCU because that's a huge challenge in and of itself.
Coach, appreciate your time. Enjoy practice. Enjoy the coaches show tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Sean. Appreciate it.
Craig Smith, Utah head basketball coach. BYU game is on Saturday. They play TCU on the road. Saturday at the Huntsman Center. It is a red out, so everyone wear your red. Go get your tickets at utahtickets.com. And the Craig Smith coaches show is tonight, 6 p.m. at Slackwater in Salt Lake City. That's 684 South, 500 West. Conversation with Craig Smith, part of our Big 12 at noon, brought to you by Mountainland Supply. Go visit them at mountainlandsupply.com. All right, more hoops with Craig Bolercheck, the voice of the Utah Jazz. Bowler with a great call on a huge sequence for Isaiah Collier. We'll talk about him and where this team goes from here. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Efforting Craig Bolerjack to talk to Utah Jazz basketball. We'll get to some NFL at 1 o'clock with Omar Ruiz of the NFL Network. Although there's a television in our studio, and we keep, whatever Sports Center, we keep ESPN on. And right now they're reporting on Mike McCarthy being out in Dallas. And I don't know, are all of us in media, myself included, are we just lazy and go with who's the biggest name? Who's the name I'm super familiar with? And I could throw that out as the candidate most likely to land with the Dallas Cowboys. Because Mike McCarthy's out, and the Dallas Cowboys, whether you love them or hate them, they're one of the biggest franchises in American sports, and they are supposed to be America's team. And they're stealing headlines on a day where all of us should be reacting to a wonderful weekend of NFL playoff football. That's what the Dallas Cowboys are. That's the juggernaut that they are. You can have games in the books, some of them, franchise changing in the case of the Washington Commanders, proof that they're on the right track finally after a couple of decades of wallowing in misery. You've got a big-time matchup tonight that has been moved because of a tragic wildfire that's happening in Los Angeles. I mean, there are storylines all over the place in the NFL, and the one that is dominating a lot of conversation today, even here in Salt Lake City, is the Dallas Cowboys job vacancy. And one of the things that's so funny about it is we get lazy. We're just like, all right, Deion Sanders, because that generates a headline. And Mike McCarthy, he's out. What about Bill Belichick? Well, again, it's low-hanging fruit. But the funniest thing possible would be Bill Belichick getting hired by anybody, by the Raiders because of the obvious Tom Brady connection, who's now a part owner, because of if he gets hired by the Dallas Cowboys, hilarious also, because a month ago when the news started to come out, when the innuendo was there, that he might actually try his hand in college football at the University of North Carolina, all of us, again, in the media world, so many of us are just like, well, yeah, because the NFL, they don't like him anymore. You know how hilarious it would be if Bill Belichick gets an NFL job 10 minutes after all of us are like, well, yeah, because the NFL's done with Bill. Can't stand him anymore. It feels likely with 5 openings still. There were 6 heading into the weekend. There are 5 openings now because Mike Vrabel has taken the helm of his former team. And that feels like a match made in heaven. That feels like a perfect marriage. We'll see if they can draft and develop to give Mike Vrabel, who was the coach of the year back, 2021? A few years ago? I mean, he's a good coach. He was a 3-time Super Bowl winner with the Patriots. He's a great player. And that's always an interesting one. When you return home in a place where you already have a lot of love, where you already have a legacy, where people right now in New England, people in Boston, love them some Mike Vrabel. And I get obsessed with this theme, right? You die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Like Mike Vrabel going back to the place where he helped bring home 3 Super Bowl rings. And he was a prominent player, right? There were bigger stars. Tom Brady, anytime you're on a team with him, he's going to be a bigger star. You could easily make an argument that there were bigger defensive stars on that team as well in the Will Fork years and the Rodney Harrison years. But Vrabel was the guy that they would do the gadget plays with. Vrabel was the guy that they would have, score the 2-point conversions as a tight end, and he was the guy who you'd bring in the jumbo packages to give Gronk another somebody to take attention away from Gronk, or if they still pay too much attention to Gronk, then guess who was catching a touchdown pass? And Vrabel was really good at knowing where, he needed to be in a zone because he was typically playing defense. So anyway, to go back to a place where you're beloved and to take on a role that is going to be an uphill climb, right? Unless they draft the perfect young quarterback, unless there's another Jaden Daniels in this year's draft that can help turn this thing around relatively quickly. The Patriots are well outside of being what everyone expects the Patriots to be when Mike Vrabel is associated with them. So we've seen it locally many times, and there is a certain amount of risk you assume as a coach when you go to the place where you played, the place where you suited up. Ty Detmer won a Heisman Trophy for BYU. Ty Detmer was universally beloved. Ty Detmer was the man in Provo. And then Ty Detmer ended up on a staff, and it didn't work out all that perfectly. Now, there's no venom or vitriol with Ty Detmer. People still love the guy. You know, he's got his cool little ranch where you can hunt zebras or whatever down in Texas. Like, he's doing things fine. But Ty Detmer's name, at least temporarily, was, pulled down somewhat by the lack of success on the coaching, the coordinating front. So Mike Vrabel's risking that in New England. And I got to tell you, if I was a part of any dynastic team, you would have to, overpay me to go back and to risk that legacy. I know that I have a different view on a lot of these things than most people do, and every player thinks that they could be a great coach, but, man, you've seen it work out well, and you've seen it work out poorly. I mean, Steve Spurrier won a Heisman Trophy and won a bunch of games and a championship and conference championships, national championship, returning to the place of his youth. And then you saw, who's the most recent example? Scott Frost, I guess, going back to Nebraska. Undefeated, unbelievable at UCF of all places, goes back to Nebraska, where he was, of course, a megastar player. And it never, ever, ever works. And now suddenly people have a complicated view of what you are and what you mean to that program. Because as a player, you were fantastic and you're a legend. And then you go back as a coach, and if it doesn't work out, oh, geez. I mean, honestly, Coach Witt's got it figured out on one front. That's the right move. You go back to the place where you were a player, and people are going to have a certain level of expectation. You go coach at the rival school, then everyone's just confused by the whole thing. And look, Kalani right now is back at his alma mater. He was a great player at BYU, but he wasn't like a Jason Buck, all right? He was not the biggest star even on his own teams, although he was a great player. I just find that interesting with Mike Vrabel. That being said, he's the one assuming the risk. I think that the Patriots are making the right hire here because there are a lot of folks that believe he never should have been removed from his position in Tennessee. A lot of folks that think that Mike Vrabel was not the problem. And as you can see with the lack of success that Tennessee has had since his departure, it appears that Mike Vrabel was not the problem. So we'll see how he fills out his staff, but feels like a win for the New England Patriots as they are the first to fill their open vacancy. A lot of interviews going on, a lot of interview requests going on around the NFL as people try to fill in those holes. And I circle back to, the headline that scrolls across the bottom of your screen while you're watching whatever you're watching on SportsCenter, you're watching whatever you're watching on ESPN. Every NFL job, I guess not every single one. I haven't seen his name associated with the Saints yet. But most of these NFL jobs, you see the ticker come across, Raiders interview, vacancy, whatever. Cowboys interview, vacancy. And now Bill Belichick's name comes up, Deion Sanders' name comes up. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the Dallas Cowboys are stealing headlines today after Wild Card Weekend. If they do one thing well, they don't win football games at an exceptional clip. They don't win playoff games certainly at an exceptional clip right now. But one thing they do better than any other team in NFL football is they steal headlines. The Cowboys are talked about as much as the Chiefs, and the Chiefs are potentially going 3 in a row in the Super Bowl. By the way, Wild Card Weekend, we didn't really talk about what comes out of Wild Card Weekend. One of the great games that you could see, we always love a regular season matchup that gives us something like this. But Bills-Ravens in the divisional round is something.
That's going to be a good one.
That is a doozy, ladies and gentlemen. And that is especially going to be a doozy if Lamar Jackson, who has been subpar, at least by his own high standards, likely to win his third straight MVP award, if he can shake off whatever it is about playoff football that makes him clutch up a little bit, do we believe that his performance against Pittsburgh, 16 of 21, 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 15 carries for 81 yards, do we believe that that is an indication that Lamar has playoff football figured out?
I mean, I would think so.
That is a divisional rival. That is a real emotional rival. If you're going to talk about, and he admitted this, he said he gets a little too excited for playoff football. You want to talk about a scenario that can get you overly excited? It's playing Pittsburgh in a win-or-go-home game, and he performed exceptionally well in that game. Now, the defense for Baltimore was even better, and to see Lamar Jackson get out-dueled by an aging Russell Wilson who has plenty of problems, that was a shock to me. That was really something to see. 20 of 29, 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, almost 10 yards per completion for Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson played one of his better games of the year in this one, but it was not enough. And the Baltimore defense stopped Pittsburgh from running basically at all. They had 29 yards on 11 carries. I think Najee Harris might be one of the most underutilized or improperly utilized players in all of football. He had a 1,000-yard season, but Najee Harris is an absolute monster.
He's 100% underrated, and Steelers have not really utilized him at all. Like, we looked at like Le'Veon Bell, like where he was utilized more when he was playing with the Steelers, but like now I kind of just see like more of a passing game with the Steelers.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just Najee Harris. Jalen Warren, former Utah high school product.
Yeah,
these guys are both excellent backs. I don't think part of it's an offensive line issue, part of it's a scheme issue. But in any case, the real story here is that Baltimore emerges with a solid game from Lamar Jackson. I mean, that stat line, he finished with a 132 quarterback rating. Pretty dang good. You'd like to see him getting bigger raw numbers, offense generating larger raw numbers, but you didn't need it necessarily when Derrick Henry is going for 186 yards on the ground. Derrick Henry having to tackle that guy should not be a daily work task for a human being. That should be more like a punishment. You have crossed the river of fire into hell, and you get to choose between you either get to push the boulder up the hill continuously or you have to try and tackle Derrick Henry all the time. That guy is as big as a defensive end, but plays running back.
I always think back to that play when Derrick Henry was still on the Titans. I think they were playing the Bills, and he just completely just plows down Josh Norman, I think it was, because he was on the Bills for that playoff run, I think, when they lost. But I don't remember.
325 carries this year, 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns. Derrick Henry at 31 years of age. Remember, playing a position where the shortest shelf life in the NFL is for running backs. You're told over and over and over again running backs are not an important position in the NFL, or they're a de-emphasized position in the NFL. Tell that to Baltimore and to Derrick Henry. And, I mean, the run game for Baltimore, putting up 300 yards in a playoff game because your quarterback can scoot and because you've got this impossible-to-stop juggernaut, that could carry a team very far. Now, will the Bills have an answer for it? We get to see that question answered in the divisional round, the 2 versus 3 seed matching up. This is a treat of epic proportions. And, of course, the Chiefs are back in action after the first round, after the wild card bye. So, going to be a fun weekend of football in the NFL. And, of course, we'll cap it off on Monday night with a college football playoff national championship coming Monday, a week from today. And you can listen to all of those games, the playoff football games in the NFL and the college football playoff national championship right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Today, you want to see a Runnin' Utes home game. Maybe you want maybe a ticket or two to that BYU matchup on Saturday. Text Utes to 33986 for your chance to see a Runnin' Utes home game. Utes to 33986 to win a pair of tickets. All right, we talked about this. We alluded to it a little bit when we were having a conversation with Josh Newman. Notre Dame is down a starting left tackle for the upcoming national championship game. Attrition is a thing in such a long season, a longer season through the 12-team playoff than I believe any of these teams have ever had to play before. I guess LSU, their national championship year, they won 15 games because they played an extra. In any case, these are long seasons. When you start to experience these injuries, we're going to take quarterback out of the picture. I put the question out on Twitter. For an important game in football, what is the most costly injury? What position can you not afford to lose somebody? What's the hardest to adapt to? I want your thoughts at 877-353-0700 at Real OC Sports. I'll tell you what I think. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Injuries are always an unfortunate thing in football. Nakobe Dean, Eagles starting linebacker. A lot of people think he is like the heartbeat of that defense. Knee injury this weekend. Looks like it'll keep him out of the rest of the playoffs. That is very, very unfortunate for the Philadelphia Eagles on the defensive side of the ball. Notre Dame, heading into the national championship game, will be without their starting left tackle, Anthony Knapp, who has played in all 15 games, started all 15 games. He's a true freshman. It's always – okay, all due respect to you offensive linemen out there, but it's one of the most hilarious things when you see a true freshman offensive lineman in uniform, because their bodies, a lot of them, are the Great Dane puppy type situation where the guy's like freakishly tall, but he hasn't filled out yet. That's not the case with Anthony Knapp. He's a monster of a human being. And even him, it's funny to watch because they'll zoom in on him when you get like, in this game against Penn State, he got hurt and he's rolling around on the turf. And then they zoomed in on him and you're just like, that kid is 14 years old. His body is that of a gigantic 20-something-year-old man, but his face, that's when it gets funny when you look at these starting true freshman offensive linemen, because no matter how enormous their physical forms are, like you could tell he can't grow a beard, It's hilarious because his body can tear you to pieces, but his face, and when you're a little bit heavier, which of course as an offensive tackle, you're supposed to be a little bit heavier, you probably have a little bit rounder cheeks. So the baby face thing is aggravated that much more. Offensive linemen already have baby faces. This kid looks like he's 7 years old, but with a grown man's body. And unfortunately for Notre Dame, he's performed really well for them all year, obviously. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, he's out.
Huge loss.
I asked the question on Twitter last night, and I'll retweet it now just to bring it front of mind for everyone who wasn't paying attention to my Twitter feed. Besides QB, what's the worst position to have a starter go down for a high-stakes game? Besides quarterback. And unfortunately, if you're a Utah football fan, you feel like you can evaluate this any number of ways, because you've gone a couple years in a row where your starting quarterback goes down, and then your backup and your backup's backup and your backup's backup has gone down in the last couple of years, right? You got the Ferrari 2-0 potentially exiting the program. He does have another year of eligibility. 2-0 as a starter because you've had so many injury problems at quarterback. We know that's the most costly injury, but what other injury has hurt you the worst? Your offensive line has stayed relatively healthy. At Utah this year, defensively, you had significant injuries at every position. Every single position had a significant injury. Kenan Johnson in the very first game, the rest of the way, defensive ends missing time. Interior D lineman missing time. Karene Reed missing time. Your safeties having to rotate constantly because people were getting banged up. I mean, every position group experienced some level of attrition, and that was in a normal 12-game schedule, not even a bowl game. Notre Dame has had to go through this gauntlet, and now they're losing a starter. And by the way, Ohio State, on the other side of this national championship game, down a tackle, down a center. So everybody is dealing with this. But what's the hardest one to overcome besides quarterback? Left tackle is front of mind and is one that I think a lot of people are going to say. That, though, is wholly dependent on how talented the guy is behind him. I think the one that was most costly for Utah this year, if you're asking me, aside from the quarterback position, the one that really hurt this team the most, Karene Reed's injury was the one that really – now, thankfully, it wasn't prolonged and it didn't take him out too often, but that, like the quarterback position, affects how well your tight ends and receivers and running backs play. Karene Reed being out as the vocal captain on that defense affected the way everyone around him played, affected the way that Lander Barton played. He was a lot stiffer, a lot more I'm not saying physically stiffer, but he played less fluid, less loose, less instinctually when he had to be the guy kind of making sure everyone was in the right spot. It's not a role that he excelled in this year. I think he leaned on Karene and everyone leaned on Karene. So, but for most teams, I mean, Philadelphia is without Nakobe Dean. Is that going to be the most costly injury that they could have experienced outside of the quarterback position? If you go by the pay structure of the NFL, it would stand to reason that quarterback is the most costly injury. That's the guy you got to keep healthy above all. And then who are the other highest paid? Well, it's left tackles, it's corners, it's pass rushers. That might have been that's probably a strong candidate for Utah as well.
Yeah.
The pass rush, Sac Lake City was not Sac Lake City this year. Connor O'Toole had a hard time being healthy. Van Fillinger played but was banged up. Logan Fano missed some time. They just never really got wrong. I mean, I don't know why I turned this into a Utah conversation because I don't want to remind everybody how bad the injury situation was. But if the question is out there at Real OC Sports, 877-353-0700, outside of quarterback, what's the most costly, what's the most difficult injury to overcome? Notre Dame and Ohio State are both having to deal with starting offensive linemen out for the national championship game, and you can make a strong case that that is the position that's hardest to adapt to when a guy goes out. All right, we got to take a quick one here. We'll start hour number 3 next. We'll talk the NFL playoffs, and we'll maybe touch on that Nakobe Dean injury. Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network is going to join me. That's coming in 3 minutes. This is the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Tyler at the snap from hash mark left for the Commanders win. The kick is up. It sails on the way, hits the upright, and goes through. He knocks it through and wins the game 23-20. The Commanders win in the postseason for the first time in 19 years.
Game-winning field goal for Zane Gonzalez. Doinked it in. That sound courtesy of Westwood One. Jason Benetti on the call. Washington Commanders advance. For the first time in 2 decades, they will face the Lions in the divisional round Saturday right here on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We are your home of the NFL playoffs and Super Bowl 59 on the radio. Talking NFL playoffs with Omar Ruiz from the NFL Network, who's kind enough to join me for a few minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Sean. Good. How are you? A little doubleheader for me. Had the Texans on Saturday in that big win, and then now just got to Arizona. I'm going to do that Vikings-Rams game. So it's playoffs. It's week 19, and we're rocking and rolling.
Yeah, a little extra Monday Night Football. What a treat, although for the worst of possible circumstances. And you're from the L.A. area, right? Everyone good?
Yeah, everyone's good. Everyone I know is good, but obviously, like most anyone else living in L.A., so many friends of friends or family of friends that have been devastated and completely affected by the fires, and, just like our thoughts and prayers with all them. And kind of what I've been telling people is we got to get the fires out. I know there's a lot more wind expected tomorrow and Wednesday, so it's critical to obviously, end the blazes. But as soon as they do, the resiliency and the fight that, we're ready to come back with will be something to look forward to.
Well, we will be very optimistic about that because that's sort of the American spirit, man. Even in these devastating scenarios, people find a way to come out on the other side, and that's something we should all be proud of. Let's talk a little football, though. Keep our minds off the rough stuff. And you know what? I thought that I would spend all day today just going over the games and, oh, my gosh, did you see this play? And, wow, what an incredible performance from whoever. And then the Dallas Cowboys come in, and they just steal the headlines because that's what the Dallas Cowboys do. Mike McCarthy is out. And I guess, there's already teams who want to interview him. I don't necessarily understand that. But that Dallas opening, how appealing is it? Whose job do you think that ends up being?
Well, I think it's appealing for the talent that could be on the roster, given that, they had all kinds of injuries this season. Dak, missed most of the year. Micah Parsons missed so many games, and they still were able to win 7 games. I think going into the year, I think we were all not sure what to expect, given all the offseason drama with the contract situations, with Mike McCarthy's lame duck status, with the lack of aggressiveness in free agency and going after marquee names. We just didn't know what would happen. And obviously for them to win 7 games in spite of all the circumstances that played out, I think it said well for Mike McCarthy and the coaching ability that he has, but also says a lot for what's there in Dallas. And I think, like it's been for so many years, Sean, this, it's how the coach can deal with Jerry Jones looming over the shoulder, participating in almost every facet of the organization still. So who wants to go to that? Who can handle that challenge? That'll be, the answer to who's the next coach there, not necessarily who might be the best candidate right now.
We'll see how it plays out. A bunch of names already attached with that job, but you never know what it's going to end up being. I want to talk about the game that you attended. Texans, Chargers. There were the narrative going into this game was really interesting because there were a lot of people who thought the Texans had no shot, and then they completely outperformed the Chargers. And I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan, covered him a lot when Utah was in the Pac-12, and obviously he was a Pac-12 quarterback. He had a rough outing. What did we learn about Justin Herbert in a playoff game that was far from his best?
That he needs a supporting cast, and he's good enough, he's talented enough, he's strong-willed enough to put together a good regular season without star-studded receivers on his side. But to really compete in the playoffs, you kind of need those X factors to win one-on-one matchups, to be able to create separation where you're not constantly trying to throw into tight windows, where you're not having guys bat balls off their hands and into the hands of the defenders. And not to absolve Justin Herbert from not having his best game. He didn't play well at all. But I think it just goes to show you how good of a coaching job Jim Harbaugh did this year with 11 wins with that roster, but also going to show how the Texans were able to exploit the holes in that roster, how much work they still have to do, and how much support Justin Herbert needs.
I'm going to keep asking you quarterback play because that's, I think a lot of the storylines from the wild card weekend, that's what I took away. The Ravens had an unbelievable game against the Steelers. 28-14, I don't think really did justice to how lopsided that game was at times. Lamar Jackson had a really solid day, and the narrative around his playoff football performances has been somewhat unfriendly. Is he silencing the doubters with that performance, or does he have to get past the Bills before we really give him the credit?
I think he's slowly but surely silencing the critics, but I think you're onto something. I don't think he completely changes the narrative unless he goes into Buffalo and beats Josh Allen and that Buffalo Bills team. I think you're right. The score did not indicate, how not competitive that game was, and really you can make the argument for the Ravens since they lost, a few weeks ago against the Philadelphia Eagles, that they've really rolled through the rest of their schedule en route to the playoffs here. But I think they are playing their best football. I think they do go into Buffalo and win, but I think Lamar needs that. And I would even say, for that narrative that we've heard about Lamar not winning in the playoffs, not winning the big one, even if they don't go into Arrowhead and win the AFC Championship game, I think it would be enough to change the narrative if they go into Buffalo and beat fellow MVP candidate Josh Allen on Sunday night.
Well, we have yet to see the Chiefs in the playoffs yet. That'll be coming up on January 18th. It's a Saturday game against the Texans. A 1-4 there. Kansas City, a big-time favorite right now, more than a touchdown favorite. Is this a team on its way to a first-time back-to-back-to-back Super Bowl in the NFL?
It feels like it. And I know a lot of people said, okay, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City Chiefs, they're barely squeaking games out. So many one-score victories. You can argue getting lucky, a few of them with a bad snap with the Raiders and the Denver Broncos blocked field goal and so many other things going right for them. But I think what we're losing in all that is that the Kansas City Chiefs, with all the contract money going to Patrick Mahomes, have number one, and the rest of their stars, Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, and just having to negotiate the salary cap in today's NFL, have mastered what it is to win in the 2-minute drill. And yes, they are hitting on their draft picks, getting those young players on rookie salary scales to play well, to play consistently, and to keep doing that draft class after draft class. But they have mastered for so many years the continuity of Andy Reid on that staff, and now Patrick Mahomes so many years, to operate under pressure the way they have. That is an advantage they have now. It's not luck. It's just part of the fabric of who they are as a football team. Not to panic when the pressure is on, when the game is coming down to the wire. You see that around the league. So many teams mismanaging timeouts, players buckling under the pressure. The Chiefs are calm, they're collected in those moments, and that is a way that they can find ways to win, and they don't panic if they're in a tight game late.
One of the great stories in the NFL right now, and probably this whole year, was the Washington Commanders and what a Heisman Trophy winning rookie quarterback can do when he's put into a good situation. For the first time in 2 decades, they're advancing in the playoffs. Do they have anything for the Lions coming up in this matchup?
I don't think so. I think, the Lions are hungry and rabid, and they're getting healthy coming off the bye. And I think, they are Super Bowl or bust. And I think they'll get past this round at the very least. But what a story with Washington. You guys played it, with the game-winning field goal, coming into this segment, and just kind of how exciting it is for that fan base. 2 decades in the making to get a playoff win. And it's just so dramatic to turn around when you talk about the new ownership and the new general manager and the new head coach and the new quarterback, top to bottom, a thorough upheaval. And for it to pay off this way with Jaden Daniels. And I think the signature moment of that game was late in the fourth, in that timeout. And and Daniels was giggling to himself. I think they're about to hit that 3rd and 2 where he scrambled for the first down and really put the game away, or at least, gave their field goal kicker a chance to win the game. But for him, in his first playoff game on the road, a rookie quarterback hadn't won on the road in more than 12 years, to be calm, cool, and collected like that, laughing to the camera, just shows a lot about Jaden Daniels. So did his talent and the plays he was able to make down the stretch. And what a win for them, and what a win for that fan base.
Last thing, because I know you're still working today. You got a game to cover, so I want to let you get to it. But the Eagles advance over the Packers. It felt like a relatively large sacrifice for Saquon Barkley to not chase a single-season record, to sit out, and it paid off. He got 25 carries for 120-ish yards in this game, and they're advancing in the playoffs. I guess I'm glad to see it pay off for him. Was it the right call?
No question. I think and even him self-sacrificing himself there in the fourth quarter, instead of going to the house and getting maybe 200 yards on the day, he takes a knee and they run the clock out. And I think just that speaks to the character of Saquon Barkley, the selflessness that we saw on display in New York, why the Giants owner, John Mara, went on Hard Knocks and was like he'd be sick to see Saquon Barkley leave. It's because of that character that he has to put the team first. And I think ultimately, if they win, if they get deep in the playoffs, it is the right call because, to see Saquon Barkley get banged up in Week 18 en route to the single-season record would have been a travesty for how his season has gone. And I think now it's all about winning for the Philadelphia Eagles. And for all what is perceived as turmoil with that team, and can they pass? Is Jalen Hurts, on the downward part of his career? Is A.J. Brown happy? Devontae Smith? I think at this point it is all about wins and getting deep in the playoffs. All these other narratives will go away, and I think that's kind of the focus of Sirianni and Barkley in making that decision, and obviously it paid off yesterday.
What books are you reading on the sideline when you're at an NFL game, Omar?
Man, I got 3 kids, 10, 8, and 4. I'm lucky to read a book every now and again. I try, Sean. Believe me, I try. There is a bed on the bedside table. There is always a book there that as soon as I crack that sucker open, I'm falling asleep, and I can barely, keep my eyes open. Same thing on the planes nowadays, man. So I figured, once the kids go off to college, then I can start to re-educate myself on the reading front.
You know what? I'm going to say the same thing. I got 5, 3, and 1 at home. So yeah, you get half a page into a book, and then it's lights out.
You know how it is, man. That's exactly it. The only books I'm reading now are Dr. Seuss books and Disney books.
That's right. Omar, appreciate your time. Enjoy the game tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, man. Talk to you next time.
Omar Ruiz, NFL Network reporter. He was at Texans Chargers. He'll be at Rams Vikings in Arizona tonight, covering things for the NFL Network. Big thanks to Omar for joining us on the show. That last crack, of course, was alluding to something, if there is a question in Philadelphia, is everybody happy? A.J. Brown is not helping that narrative by busting out a book during the game, sitting on the sideline reading a book. Now, because they won the game, you can meme it and you can laugh about it, and the quarterback can chuckle it and shrug his shoulders and just be like, what do you want? I mean, look, it wasn't a beautiful game from Jalen Hurts. He was effective enough that they got the win, and that's really what matters. They're going to lean on their defense. They're going to lean on Saquon Barkley through the run of this playoffs. Hurts was 13-21 for 131 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He did not turn the ball over via interception. He's only getting 6 yards a catch or 6 yards of completion. Those are not big-time winning quarterback numbers necessarily. Credit Green Bay for trying to make it difficult on him. But when your star wide receiver, A.J. Brown, gets 10 yards in a game, when Devontae Smith only gets 55 yards in a game, neither of those guys touch the end zone, you're going to start getting these diva personalities, or even receivers who aren't prone to diva personalities. The position itself breeds discontent because you want to be part of every single play. As a football player, you want to be part of every single play. And yet sometimes the most impressive, freakish athletes on the field choose to play a position where, like, a maximum effort, unbelievable day is you're directly affecting 15 plays, like
Yeah.
that's a huge day if you get 15 catches. If you get 15 targets, that's a huge day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these guys are automatically wired. It's such a precarious thing where it's just like, well, what did I do wrong? What did you do wrong? Why am I not getting looked at more? Why didn't I get more touches? Because even on a great day, you're involved in 1/6 of the snaps on that side of the football. And A.J. Brown gets one catch, and he busts out a book and reads it on the sideline. And some people are interpreting that as saying, like, he's bored, saying, oh, you're not even going to use me. I'm going to do something else. Like, he was trying to make a statement with that. I just look at it, and I say, that's a winning team, all right? They're advancing in the playoffs right now. That guy, I don't care how mad he is. I don't care how bothered he is. What actually proves to be significant down the stretch is, are you still playing? A.J. Brown hopefully was doing that as a tongue-in-cheek, like, funny little gesture. He just said post-game, hey, I like to read. Okay, we've never seen you do it before.
Ever.
So, like, haha, I guess.
Yeah.
Keep it in the locker room. If you have some kind of statement to make about not being targeted enough, like, do that in-house when you're a playoff team that's winning. Don't try to take shine away from the guys that are pushing things forward. He's too good of a player to be causing real problems on his team. So hopefully that is not the case. But I also think it's funny, like, if you're going to choose a book, if you're going to choose something to read on the sideline, on the bench of an NFL football game, I mean, what are you going to read? What book are you going to read? You going with something motivational? You going with a self-help type situation? Do you go with a novel that, I don't know, either calms you down or gets you more excited, whatever you need? Do you go with like a children's book, something that's guilty pleasure, just wipes the mind, Where the Wild Things Are? You know what I mean?
That's a good book.
It's a great book.
It is.
Nostalgic, makes you feel good.
Football 101. That's a good book.
How to play wide receiver.
How to get the quarterback to throw me the ball.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be a good
That
book.
would be hilarious if he was actually reading something. The book that he was reading is called Inner Excellence. All right? Let's go to Amazon and let's find out. I bet this book, by the way, is selling like crazy right now as either a gag gift or people actually being like, oh, okay, what's this about? Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. Inner Excellence, train your mind for extraordinary performance and the best possible life. Discover the life guide that has developed world champions, empowered athletes to become world number one, and most importantly, transform their hearts and minds. This step-by-step training manual from one of the world's top mental skills coach will teach you how to train your mind like the very best. Inner Excellence. $17.97 on Amazon right now. Prime shipping eligible. You can get it by Thursday, January 16th. That's actually not very fast by Prime standards.
Not at all.
This must be a popularity thing.
Yeah.
It says it's in stock, but it's going to take 3 days to get there? I don't think so. All right? That means you got to walk in, hopefully, to a locally owned bookstore and ask them if they have it.
Yeah, it's crazy. And like me and Zachariah, when you were gone, touched on this too, when that whole thing was going on, is A.J. Brown's just a diva, you know?
Well, look, like I said, wide receivers are by nature prone to diva behavior.
Yeah.
And it's a conundrum because most wide receivers are built in such a way that they could play a different position on the field. Most of these guys have the physical tools that they could play a different position. A.J. Brown is a big, fast, strong dude, right? And the path of least resistance for a lot of individuals, he's 27 years old, okay? So probably 14 years ago, he decided, all right, I'm getting serious. We're going into like middle school now. What position is best for my future? I'm going to play wide receiver. He's listed at 6'1", 226 pounds. So A.J. Brown, if he wanted to, could have been a linebacker. spend a little more time in the weight room, eat a little bit more protein, and you're the size of Bobby Wagner. You're 240 pounds, and you're still running fast, right? Wide receivers choose to play a position that doesn't expose you to constant physical punishment. You don't have to take on offensive linemen. You don't have to deal with a pulling guard. You're never really matching up with someone who's larger than you if you're a wide receiver, not for the most part. And then they get mad when they're not involved in every single play. Well, I'm sorry, AJ. You want to find your own origin story as a villain, go all the way back to when you were in middle school or high school or college, maybe if it was late, when you decided that this is going to be the profession that you pursued. If you want to be a guy who's featured in every single play, then play something on the defensive side of the ball and play something that's in the middle of the formation, okay? Make yourself a linebacker, AJ. Make yourself a safety. I promise you have the physical tools that you could have done so. Wide receivers, I don't know why coaches don't have this conversation with them. I think it's because you want them to, dial back in. But, like, if I never will be, if I was a head coach at an elite level and a wide receiver came to me and just like, oh, my gosh, I only got one target, I only got 2 targets, I only got 1 catch. Like, dude, if you wanted to be involved in every single play, you chose the wrong position. A.J. Brown was featured in this game less than the punter was. He touched the ball fewer times than the long snapper did. Wow. And, yeah, that bothers him because he's a talented player and he can have an impact. But reading a book on the sideline and trying to make something about yourself, if you're doing it tongue-in-cheek, that's fine. If you're actually doing this as some form of protest that you think people are going to get on your side, shut up, dude. Your team's winning.
Yeah. Not being a team player, bro.
You having 10 yards in a win means nothing. All right? You having 150 yards in a loss means nothing. Be a team player.
Yeah. Like, we didn't see a lot of production from Terry McLaurin in the first few weeks of the season, and now, like, look at this. It's kind of like.
All right, I'm gonna get Zach's gonna get a homework assignment. I'm gonna buy him this Inner Excellence book, and you're gonna have to read it, and you're gonna have to do like a 4-page report. All right, MLA format. Do they still do that in college? You have to do your reports in a certain.
It's either APA or MLA.
Yeah, APA or MLA format. Yeah. Hey kids, if you're out there, when your professor says you got to do this in APA format or MLA format, you're not going to remember what that is one day after you graduate from college. After you get that degree, you're going to forget the differences between APA and MLA. All right? So don't stress out about it too much.
I already forgot how to write in it, so there you go.
Citing your sources, have fun, kids.
Yep.
All right? Nobody is ever going to ask you to do that again. And if they do, guess what you're going to do? You're going to pull your phone out of your pocket, and you're going to access Google, or now you could probably use Chat GPT. You could just speak into your phone and be like, find me a point, find me a stat that proves my point, right?
Yep.
You don't have to cite your sources in real life, ladies and gentlemen. I'm off the soapbox now. All right. Is it true that we're getting Craig Bolerjack?
I believe so.
All right.
Call him.
We had some technical difficulties getting a hold of Craig Bolerjack earlier. We're going to try it again, talk a little Utah Jazz basketball. Is Lauri Markkanen is he an all-star in the 2024-2025 season? Voting is open right now. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. O'Connell Show. Time to talk a little hoop, little Utah Jazz hoop. Voice of the Utah Jazz, Craig Bolerjack, kind enough to join us after we had some technical difficulties on our end trying to get a hold of him earlier. And Bowler, because he's the man, gives us another shot at it. Craig Bolerjack, welcome. How are you?
Hey, Sean, I'm good. Actually, it's probably my fault. I don't get iPhones. For some reason, my phone sometimes just I don't know if it just maybe freezes up. I don't know, but I'll fix it. I'll fix it and work it out. But it's good to be with you, man. Good to talk to you.
The key is you got to not download the automatic updates. When your phone tells you that it's going to automatically update, you got to circumvent that somehow. They're trying to make you download a bug, so you have to buy a new phone. I'm fully convinced of that conspiracy theory. Let's talk a little Utah.
The battery wears out right on time, so you have to go in and grab a new one. You're right.
That's exactly right. Let's talk a little Isaiah Collier. Career high, 23 points, 7 boards, 7 dimes. And most impressive for me, not the game-winning shot, the fact that he goes fully horizontal about 8 feet in the air, slams down onto the hardwood, and just gets up, shakes it off, and continues.
I tell you, Sean, he is one tough guy. I wouldn't want to get hit if he was playing outside backer or a strong safety. The guy is really a physical player, and I'm glad to see him really maturing, coming along. He's been really distributing the dimes of late, as you know, and last night 7 more. And you're right. He took the hit. He went to the locker room. Sensabaugh took the free throw. Some new rule this year that I'm just now becoming aware of. And I should have, but the fact is, once you leave the floor and a teammate takes your free throw, you can't return. But since it was a concussion protocol check, then he was able to come back, right, and hit the floor and became such an important part of what the Jazz did at the very end. And the other part, Sean, I'll be honest, I thought it was another step in his maturation with the 8-second call and a little bit of a back and forth with Colin Sexton. And then they were able to move past that, and then he becomes the key to the Jazz win last night, driving in overtime for the winner. So a lot of good things happened last night. A lot of youth played. A lot of growth took part, and you have to play in these situations, in my book, to even understand what it takes to be a high-level to be in a high-level position to win in this league, the NBA. And I'm glad to see Isaiah making some steps in the right direction.
Well, I got to admit, with the season that, a lot of people want to see a full aggressive tank and in a team that is not going to make the playoff and doesn't seem interested in making the playoff, these are the moments that you kind of tune in for. Like, what can these rookies, what can these young players become in these growth opportunities? How's he going to react to adversity, to a disagreement, to being coached hard? How's he going to react when the ball's in his hands in an important scenario? Because you got to find these things out, and you got to find them out before the whole roster is fleshed and before you're actually trying to chase big things, which, of course, they're not right now. In these last few games, you've had different guys kind of step up. Bryce Sensabaugh has played pretty well as of late. Collier, as we're talking about most recently. Who have you seen, I guess, the brightest spots from? Or who's a guy that now you've looked at and said, all right, I know this isn't the year for Utah Jazz basketball to do special things, but if they're going to eventually, I'd like to see him be part of it.
Well, I think Isaiah probably tops my list because point guard is really where I think, it all starts. Great teams are run by really very, very good point guards. Bigs, Walker Kessler jumps out. Even though he had a night of rest last night, I think he's really grown, gotten stronger, seems more confident in himself, grown into his body in his third year. Kyle Filipowski's intriguing, a very early second-round pick that just fell in the Jazz lap. Well coached at Duke, has an NBA body, seems to be really in that IQ level of understanding what Will Hardy wants in rotations, and I think trying to pick up his defensive swagger some. But he's got the ability to block shots too, but stretch the floor. So there's players out there that I think the Jazz have taken that they're trying to be patient on. Can the fans be patient? I think last night was almost like for me, 9 straight home losses. It's tough. It's tough to see the fans still attend and, walk out like, oh, here we go. It's the youth, but also they understand the growth that it takes to be, a hopeful champion one day. Last night was kind of like a feel-good moment to say, look, all the hard work, the losses that have come, look, you got to win once in a while to feed yourself back to go to the gym again, to have a feel-good moment. And that was one of those moments last night. Granted, 10 wins. Granted, the Jazz want to try to get a top 1 or 2 pick in this upcoming draft, maybe even the same scenario next season as they try to, put all the pieces together. But I think, OC, honestly, Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck got a good taste of what maybe they drafted last night because they were on their own for the first time, really, with all the vets, all the starters, even Keontae, who's been out with a heel injury. It really was up to the younger draft picks to either get that win or lose it. And I think it's just that feel-good moment that puts you back in the gym and say, hey, maybe we're making progress, and that's a good thing.
Craig Bolerjack, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about Utah Jazz basketball. It's probably an unfair question because it's not the reality, but is a fully healthy Lauri Markkanen in 2024, 2025, is he an all-star this year?
Oh, boy. I'd say this season, is he an all-star?
If he were able to stay healthy.
Oh, if he was. I think, again, the pressure on him, OC, has been tremendous. And I think you've seen what I've seen is multiple double teams on Lowry. That's made it really difficult for him to find his space. He had struggle inside early. He's been able to step out a little bit better and hit the three. Hasn't taken as many free throws this season. But when you're the centerpiece on everyone's defensive radar every night, it's difficult. And until someone else has shown that they can score and open some space for him, which, by the way, I think the last 10 games the Jazz have been able to do that with Sexton, some Isaiah Collier play. They have to respect the ability for him to drive inside and kick out. But Markkanen is that borderline. It'll be interesting to see with the way the Jazz stand, if they are able to get a coach's pick in that regard. Walker Kessler, I think, has maybe turned a few heads as well.
Yeah.
The last month has been very strong rebounding. His offensive boards lead the league up until last night, and I think he still does. And his shot blocking is still at a high level. He may get a look from some of the coaches to make a visit out to San Francisco. But Lowry is in a tough position being the guy. But also I think he accepts it, which is important. He's well paid, which he probably does more or less appreciate, right? Who wouldn't? But he understands what's happening, and that is a rebuild that he's the centerpiece of with a lot of young players, and it makes it more difficult for him to achieve some of those maybe personal goals. But I think he's on board with exactly what the Jazz are trying to do.
I'm going to ask you another unfair question because I know it's not your job. You're supposed to give us great calls, which you do consistently, but you do get to see all the teams in the league, and you get to see to see the players and the models. You've been around the game long enough to know what model works, what model might work here in Utah. And, again, this is a perfect world scenario, but who is a franchise in the NBA right now that Jazz fans should be watching that, hey, this could be us in 2 or 3 years, assuming Lowry's part of the roster and assuming you keep the young core and all the promising pieces you've got. You can't say, well, just go find yourself a Victor Wembanyama like the Spurs because that's an alien that happened to fall into their lap. But who's a franchise that you would like to see this Jazz team like follow that model, even if not exactly?
That's a great question. I think, the Thunder were down and out for quite a while, and they put some pieces together with a couple of no-namers like Luguentz Dort, who maybe isn't a household name, but I've got a lot of respect for because he does that one thing, and he plays defense. Yeah. And I think you have to be a defensive-minded club like Boston. How did they win the title last year? They were the better defensive team than Dallas. And I think Houston's a good example as well. And who's the two top teams right now in the West is OKC and Houston. The Rockets have done it through the draft. OKC has done as well, but guess what? They picked the right star to come in and lead, and that's SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And, OC, I'll be honest, those two teams are probably two teams the Jazz do study, to be honest. And, in the Western Conference, in the Eastern Conference, pardon me, I'm looking around and I'm thinking there's just a lot of uncertainty. New York was on the bottom of the pile, but yet they make some moves, and they have the ability to spend probably better than most. Lakers as well. Miami, if they want. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Jimmy Butler. But I think in the West especially, it's aging. And the Jazz are in a position and a time frame where that window begins to open, and the Phoenix window and the Laker window and the Golden State window and even the Denver window starts to close, and the Jazz are able to jump and be a presence, hopefully a dominant presence sooner than later. But I think right off the top of my head, I thought of Oklahoma City and I think of Houston. And those are a couple of teams not long ago were kind of where the Jazz are. And you know what? You can make progress. You have to be lucky, but you also have to make some really strong, smart decisions in the draft. And then how does Danny use those draft picks, all those he's got a bucket load, right? How does he use those? Do you move up? Do you trade them? What kind of assets can you use to help yourself, but not in 5 years' time, but in the next 24 months, and to see what the Jazz can bring to Salt Lake? And how do you draft? And can you hit the free agent market and actually hit on that as well? With a player that wants to be here and be a part of what the Jazz are trying to build.
Before I let you go, what's the Mason-Dixon line in this upcoming draft where you got to be above this number pick? Where, look, this team is not just going to come out and say we're tanking, we're going to deliberately lose every other game. Fans here are smart. Everybody knows the score. Everyone knows what's happening, and you applaud, an overtime win, and then you're like, oh wait, you don't want too many of those though. So it's a weird spot for everyone to be in.
It is.
But if it's not going to be the number 1 overall pick, maybe not the number 2. This is supposed to be a deep draft. As you've talked to folks around the organization, as you've seen some of the prospects yourself, you got to be above where if you want to really find a franchise changer.
Well, I think 5 would be the marker, and then the potential to either move up if possible, or get lucky like Atlanta did last year with Ricochet. Now, he hasn't really proven much yet, but that's what happens when you draft 19-year-olds, right? OC, I mean, you're drafting younger and younger players every year, so you don't maybe get the automatic status of, the stratification. Is that a word? I didn't even use that. But to be satisfied with that guy, and I think Cooper Flagg gets so much love and attention, and he's an incredible young talent. But is he going to be there? Most likely not. The Jazz have 10 wins, and I'm looking at the standings as we speak. Washington Wizards in a bad way, and they still make changes. Kyle Kuzma is floating in no man's land, the former Ute great. And you also see what New Orleans is going to do. We're going to see the Pelicans twice this coming week on the road. And what do you do to go and play OC and still have? I tell you, to say let's go compete, but also compete but lose.
Yeah.
To me, that's tough to do, man.
Oh,
I mean,
terrible.
I think most athletes are all on one wavelength. And what are you taught at a young age? Work hard. The work will pay off, and you're going to win. And you're supposed to hit the floor and win. And the Jazz are trying to build that locker room mentality of, look, we're building towards the future, and let's play our best. But you can't spoil it. Will can't say, okay, I'm just going to call everybody off the floor, and let's just call this one good. I mean, you still have to play, and the fans deserve that respect as well. This is a great conversation to have, and it takes an hour to even get through it, and even more so because the fine line of winning and losing, but with respect, and you still build that winning tradition and building blocks that you have to build back what the Jazz once had with Carl and John and Jerry Sloan and Jeff Hornacek. I mean, those are the days Jazz Nation remembers and remembers well. How do you get back to that? It takes time and some luck. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens the rest of the way. Do the Jazz here? I know you got to go, but do the Jazz make any moves prior to the trade deadline, which they have the last 2 years?
Yep.
And if they do, that basically hands it over to the younger guys even more, like we saw last night, and that helps determine what their final position will be prior to the lottery. And look, Atlanta actually got the one last year. What were they, number 10 when they went in? man, sometimes you got to be lucky. And the Jazz last year went from 8 to number 10. So you never can really depend on the lottery to get you what you want. There is luck involved, and hopefully the Jazz will have Lady Luck on their side some.
Yeah, you hope so. And I think that I think what you alluded to, I think they do make a move or two to offload some of these quality veterans, and we'll be sad to see them go, but it feels like the right recipe to climb your way up in that draft lottery because that does matter. To satisfy my own curiosity, who's your NFL team?
Well, I grew up in Kansas City, and I was at every Chiefs game OC as a kid. I had a Wolfpack pass, $5 got me into every game all year. And my mom and dad had tickets, but they let me sit down with my brother in the end zone, cheap seats, and I loved every minute of Old Municipal Stadium, and then Arrowhead was built. But ever since I was like 6 years old, I was at every Kansas City Chiefs game. The Willie Lanier, the Buck Buchanans, the Lenny Dawson, Mike Garrett, Eddie Podolak. I mean, all those names just still filter through my brain every year. We waited 50 years to get back to the Super Bowl after winning Super Bowl IV against Minnesota and a guy named Joe Kapp. That's going way back in history. But I was a young kid, man, and young people are so influenced by their teams when they're so young, and you always hold on to them. And I remember the Raiders, one of our biggest competitors, and couldn't stand Ben Davidson and Marv Hubbard. These are names that just keep popping in my head. Daryl LaMonica.
Love it.
But that's how you build tradition, and that's why Jazz Nation is so strong here. They remember and they pass those names along to their grandkids, right, or their sons and daughters. And the names of Joe Ingles rings true, and Donovan will not be forgotten. And the same with Rudy Gobert. Who's that next level of players that the fans engage and embrace? And for me, the Chiefs, I mean, how can you not like Mahomes and Kelsey, even though most of football doesn't, because they all believe the NFL referees are in on it, right? I love it, but it drives talk radio, and it drives the passion of fans. I love it. And it's going to be interesting. I'd say that, the Texans are good. That's the first up. The Chiefs should be healthy rolling in, but this is a good playoff. And you saw the wild cards yesterday, and you got one later tonight. And I'd say that Buffalo-Baltimore game is really intriguing.
Ooh, that's a game.
Those are two teams that are definitely ready to hold a trophy to win the Lombardi Award. But the Chiefs are still there. They're king. They have to be dethroned. And you know what? The way they won this year, I've held my breath, 12 times on just incredible last-second plays that Mahomes just seems to cherish. And I don't know if they can be that reckless in the postseason. It's going to be quite interesting to see if they get back, even with a chance to win their third straight Super Bowl.
Well, it's weird because I'm a Niners fan, and they've broken my heart a couple of times.
Yes.
But now I'm kind of rooting to see history. I want to hate him, Bowler, but you can't hate Andy Reid. He's having a blast. Those guys play the right way for him. Everyone's playing hard. I'm a Swiftie. So I'm just like, you know what? Fine. Fine. If you're going to do it, if you're going to be that team, just go and do something we've never seen before. And you know what?
Yeah.
Do
the three-peat, and then here's the tip of it, OC. What if they win, Kelsey's the MVP, and then he goes on a knee and asks Taylor Swift for his hand on an engagement day at Super Bowl? It wouldn't surprise me at all, man.
The internet breaks if that happens.
It would. That would blow it all up. Absolutely.
Bowler, appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Talk soon.
Craig Bowler, Jack. You will hear him on those Utah Jazz broadcasts. 10 wins right now under the belt for the Utah Jazz. That's they're good for fifth best Ottery odds right now. They've got Charlotte coming up in 2 days. That'll be a home game. Tickets are cheap, guys. Just letting you know, it's not a great product necessarily right now. But last night's game was fun. And we talked about Isaiah Collier, and he showed some bright moments. And really that's what you need in these games where you're not even really caring if the team wins. You're looking to see if somebody on this roster can be a foundational piece of whatever is to come for Utah Jazz basketball. And unfortunately, as Bowler mentioned, that might be the story for the next 12 to 24 months. That's asking a lot of patience from people whose pocketbooks are not bottomless. But here it is. All right, we'll wrap the show up. Maybe talk with Spence Checketts next on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Here on ESPN 792.1 FM, text winner to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win $1,000 cash. Winner to 508-777-1000 for your chance to win. We also have a topical trivia question for you. 2 tickets to PBR bull riding at the Delta Center coming up February 7th and 8th. PBR is awesome. If you have not been to a PBR event, you're going to want to go. 2 tickets. If you can tell me how many yards Saquon Barkley had in his wild card weekend playoff game. Remember, he decided not to chase the record. He sat out the final week of the regular season. 25 carries. How many yards? 877-353-0700 for 2 tickets to the PBR coming up February 7th and 8th at the Delta Center. Up next is The Drive with Spence Checketts. He's here in studio with me. And is your mic on, Spence?
It is. It is. We did it today. This is, it's a good start to the week that I can sit down as a radio host in front of a microphone that's actually on.
That's a win, Zach. Well done.
I got to say I respect Saquon for just falling down after the first down. But your boy may have been playing a DraftKings lineup that needed like a Saquon touchdown, So that whole opening, I'm like, no. Okay, smart decision.
Doing the right thing for your team versus all the bettors out there.
Yeah.
It's got to be a tough decision.
Yeah. But could have used that to hit the parlay.
Okay.
But, life goes on.
Thoughts and prayers.
How's your weekend, man?
It's good.
Good.
Weekend. I'm on a quest for a dog right now.
I understand that, and I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it to do it because it is a life enhancer.
Yes.
I love dude. I feel bad like leaving him when I come do the show. I'm like, sometimes I want to just bring him in the studio.
You should.
I will. Now, last time I did, I don't know if you've noticed this hole. I brought him in studio about, 2 years ago, and he's 4, so he was 2 then, and he tried to eat through the wall of our studio. But he's grown.
It's fine.
He's grown since then, so hopefully we should be safe.
I had a dog going way back to, I guess, the last time I was on these airwaves when me and old Jan Jorgensen were roomies.
Shout out to Jan.
I had my dog, Little Jerry Sloan. Little Jerry.
Oh, really? Nice.
He was an Italian Mastiff, a Cane Corso, about 150 pounds, and
Lovely.
a head that was like twice as big as my gigantic head.
Okay.
And I showed up back at the house one day. A rental, mind you.
Uh-huh.
And he had chewed up I don't know, like 4x2 hole in the wall.
Yeah.
So
that's rough.
It was funny.
Was he because sometimes dogs that size scare people.
Yeah.
But then a lot of dogs that size are the sweetest dogs. Was
Right.
that what was it? What was his temperament?
Yeah, he was super sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was you got to socialize dogs like that. Public service announcement.
Sure.
If you have a dog that can be a weapon, you better learn how to socialize
Sure.
it and train it.
Yeah.
Be responsible owners. However you want to do that with your dogs. But anyway, yeah. So that I spent way too much time this weekend trying to find the perfect dog because I got to satisfy my own desires, that of my wife, which is obviously far more important. 2 little girls. And then a baby who will eventually have a very strong opinion about
Indeed.
what sort of dog we're supposed to get. So the search continues, but it'll happen.
Where are we at on the process?
So I think we've agreed that because I leave the country to call some PFL fights next week.
Mm-hmm.
And we agreed that don't bring a puppy into the house until after you get back from
Probably
that
fair.
6-day trip.
Probably
I was
fair.
like, okay, fine.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
Fine. So, yeah, that's where we're at right now. But, we're narrowing in. We're down to like 4 strong candidates, I think.
I love it. And you do have to, certainly with the youngs in the household, you have to make sure the dog is one that can be, I would recommend, mine's an English cream. And are you going to buy, are you going to adopt?
Well, here's the thing. If I can find a young puppy that checks the other boxes that we're looking for, I'd much rather adopt.
For sure.
But here's the problem is that usually when you get puppies, they're like 6 to 7 to 8 months old or whatever, and that becomes more difficult because like I don't want to. I got a baby at home.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
I mean? Yeah. This dog is gonna be taught the way I want it to be taught from like 10 weeks old.
And I only ask because I'm not one to judge. Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted this breed of dog because it's very similar to the dogs that I grew up with: an English cream, golden retriever, lab. Stunning. I know you're shocked about that. And so when I found
white picket fence,
enough. Okay. Yes. Right out of Central Casting for Disney World. We've talked about all 6 of us, Spence. 2 golden retrievers, 6 kids, blonde hair, blue eyes.
Boat. It's fine.
The whole thing. You could keep going, and there's nothing I could say in return. So I found the breed on KSL down Eagle Mountain.
Beautiful.
And so went and bought my puppy. And I only bring up the adopt or shop element because when you buy your puppy and then you are in the dog community, you are judged instantly and often, including yesterday at Liberty Park. Had my pup. He's running around. He's playing with other dogs. And this, like, tragically hip couple. And, like, you know, Liberty, they probably live right across the street from Liberty Park.
Yeah.
You know, they forage for their own food.
We call that Liberty Wells area.
Exactly.
Yes.
Like a bike with gear that they both ride over the park to walk their dog. And like, did you buy the dog or is that a rescue? I'm like, no, I bought him. And the look, man, like, go home and listen to Phoebe Bridgers. Get another ironic tattoo. Leave me alone. I wanted a dog that was like this. So just if you shop, you will be judged by the adopters.
It's fine. The first dog I ever had, we adopted. Jedi he's an amazing dog.
Nice name.
He was a healer mix, just a mutt of whatever proportions. He was a phenomenal dog.
Yeah.
I applaud anyone who wants to adopt. If you're going to shop, I will not judge you even one little bit. Just take care of the dog. Make it a good dog.
Mm-hmm.
Let the dog live a happy life.
100%.
All right? I genuinely hate that I can't go and pick up every dog from the Humane Society and that eventually some of them are going to be destroyed. I genuinely hate that.
Yeah.
I have a softer spot for dogs than I do for people.
Yeah.
But now I have small children in the home, and unfortunately I'm not going to go get a 5-year-old pit bull mix that was abused in its previous home and deal with the potential repercussions.
Totally get it, man.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I can't do that.
I totally get it. I don't think anybody will judge you. So anyway, there's a good 10-minute segment on the joys of canines in your life.
All right. Stay tuned for The Drive with Spence Checketts. Thanks for listening to the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.